Chapter 206. Then tell me. He still doesn't turn around, but it's not convenient for him to leave. Red Lady steps on the chaos under her feet and walks to him slowly. She stroked Li Yunxin's chest with a finger and said, Li darling, think about it again. The 9th young master has lived in Weishui River for 1,000 years. How can Bai Yunxin not know that? But why did he run away a few days ago, afraid that Bai Yunxin would chase after him? In fact, this question has always been in Li Yunxin's mind. On a rainy night, when he first met the 9th young master in the ruined temple, he seemed to be hiding from someone. He used the incense table in the temple to make a fire and roasted the body of the Taoist of Lingshu Sword School. In the middle of eating, he heard the noise in the sky and ran away in panic. Later, he thinks that he should be hiding from Bai Yunxin at that time. In the past, Li Yunxin thought that Bai Yunxin didn't eat the 9th young master because both of them had backers. The 9th young master is the son of Shinryu, and Bai Yunxin is the adopted daughter of Golden Winged Rock. Shinryu is the common lord of demons and monsters in the world, while Golden Rock is the common lord of the feather race in the world. But later, he knows that at least it seems that the 9th young master is not in power. His position in front of Shinryu is far lower than that of Bai Yunxin. Moreover, neither of them seemed like the kind of people who would play the game of chasing, running, and switching to the other person when they caught up to them. So something happened during that time. And those things are related to me and Dongting in the future? Of course. You are so smart. Red Lady says with a smile. It is said that the Golden Winged Rock likes to eat dragons. But how many dragons are there in the world? 1 Shinryu and 9 dragon sons. How can he like to eat? But this kind of thing can't be a rumor. If it is a rumor, Shinryu, as the common lord of demons and monsters in the world, will not allow this kind of nonsense to spread. So, it's this evil Jiao. Li Yunxin sighed in a low voice. So the legendary Golden Winged Rock, that likes to eat dragons, is actually referring to this evil dragon? Exactly. Bai Yunxin said that she was traveling the world, but she was actually looking for food for her adoptive father. The 9th young master was the one who handed over to her, and I was the one who handed over to the 9th young master. Li Lang could think about it. Where did the flesh and blood of the thousands of skeletons in the lake go? If we let them rot slowly, can we still stay in Dongting? The truth was rather shocking. Eating the flesh and blood of the evil flood dragon was not shocking. All he said was, this evil Jiao was born because a part of Shinryu's soul leaked out and contaminated the water creatures at the bottom of the lake. Li Yunxin felt that something was amiss. In other words, although they're not real dragons, they're still dragons. If Shinryu knew that the Golden Winged Rock was eating this thing, unless he was a coward, how could he not be angry? But your father? My father said that it was approved by Shinryu. The 9th young master didn't know about it, and thought that I was hiding it from my father. But in fact he knew everything. Li Lang, what are you worried about? Red Madam rolled her eyes and comforted him. You don't have to worry. My father said that probably because Shinryu suffered a disaster, and its strength was greatly damaged, so it used this method to win over the King Rock to deter the demons. Bai Yunxin pursued the 9th young master before because the evil Jiao was born late this year. The Golden Winged Rock was impatient, so Bai Yunxin was impatient too. She said that she might as well catch the 9th young master and give him to her adoptive father. I'm not very clear about the details, but Li Lang, now that Dongting is sealed, there's no Jiao meat to give to Bai Yunxin. Li Lang, have you thought of any way? At this time, Li Yunxin has no idea what kind of existence Lord Dongting is to him. The 9th young master claimed to be his friend, but Li Yunxin only wanted to kill him. He didn't want to have a friend who might kill him at any time. He could talk to Kun Wuxia in a friendly way, but that was only because of the situation. Once the conditions were right, he would kill Kun Wuxia without even blinking his eyes. Only this Lord Dongting. Li Yunxin really didn't know what kind of existence this 3,000-year-old big demon was. Every time he thought he was going to kill him, he would get something from him. And every time he thought he could be a friend, at least not an enemy, he would be tricked by him. Now that he was trapped in Dongting and knew these things, he didn't understand the meaning of the old demon at all. If what Lord Dongting said was true, then it meant that his bloodline was nobler than anyone else in this world. The emperors and the royal family in the human world had noble bloodlines. More than one country's royal family would worship the two sages, and only their portraits. The emperors who had millions of people couldn't even see the two sages' faces when they were alive. The kingdom of Qing wasn't a small country, but if Ling Kongzi went to the capital, he could also receive the courtesy of the emperor. This was not only because the cultivators had unimaginable power, but also because Daotong and Kenzo had the power to control the world. Now, Lord Dongting told him that the master of calligraphy and the master of sword had a son when they were young, but they didn't have any more children. That son entered the secular world and gave birth to descendants. Then the kingdom of ancient Wei was established for more than 2,000 years, and it had many branches. Then, the kingdom of Wei was destroyed, and only one branch of the Shangguan family survived. In fact, from a long time ago, the two sages probably didn't care about the so-called kinship anymore. 1, 2, 3, 4 or even more generations they might still care about it. However, after thousands of years, such kinship seemed to have no meaning to anyone. The Shangguan family had been the royal family for hundreds of years. Other than the direct line of descent, they must have left behind countless descendants in the world. If they were only related by blood to the descendants of the two sages, there would probably be millions of mouths in the world. However, Li Yunxin's mother, Shang Guanyu, returned to Daotong after nearly 3,000 years. This was what cultivators often talked about as the fruit of fate. Because of this fruit of fate, the thin bloodline of the two sages in her body finally had a real meaning. And when it came to Li Yunxin, it also had a meaning. Lord Dongting helped the Shangguan family establish the kingdom of ancient Wei because of the grace of the Master of Swords' guidance, before he achieved enlightenment. But Li Yunxin didn't believe that after more than 2,700 years, this big demon would suddenly think of that love and decide to help him again. His mother, Shang Guanyu, had eloped with the art saint's remnant with the all-seeing jade slip and lived in seclusion for more than 10 years. But now, small fries from the Freemasonry and the Lingshu sword sect suddenly came to stir up trouble. With all these things mixed together, Li Yunxin realized that he seemed to have fallen into a huge whirlpool. At least, it was no longer the plot of a mountain village youth facing a crisis and struggling to survive alone. He sighed slightly in his heart. This should be what the real world should be like. To survive from such a dangerous experience, there must be someone else helping or restraining him. For example, when he first came to the city of Wei, someone did something to Inspector Yin. He didn't care that Inspector Yin sent someone to investigate his past, because it would take more than a day to investigate, and by that time, he had already done what he wanted to do. But he didn't expect that an experienced person like Inspector Yin would quickly come to a practical conclusion. He even found out where his family lived. Of course, it was wrong information. This meant that someone was helping him. Therefore, in everything that Li Yunxin did after that, he intentionally or unintentionally left some loopholes or leeway, so that one or several forces hiding in the dark could have a chance to infiltrate. But the problem was they seemed to disappear. Now, when Red Madam asked him what he should do, Li Yunxin was silent for a long time and didn't speak. He didn't mean to hold back, but he really didn't know what to do. There were too many pieces of information, too many clues and no clue. Because of so many things, he was at a loss. It was as if he had returned to the days when he first came to the city of Wei. He sighed. There's nothing I can do. Help me find Ling Kongzi first. This was a key figure that he had overlooked. Ling Kongzi had met the two sages before he went down the mountain. It was not an ordinary thing. Li Yunxin didn't know his background before. He only thought that what the two sages told him was the internal secret of Daotong, which was related to how to get the translucent jade slip. But now he realized that it might also be related to him. At this moment, Red Madam's face suddenly changed. Li, there are people outside, she said in a low but serious voice. The Red Madam, who was infatuated with talent, had become a completely different person. They are fighting near Dongting, and they have triggered the inhibition of Dongting. Before Li Yunxin asked, Red Madam had already said, My father refined the Jianmu into my body. I can feel it. You can't leave me. Li Yunxin sighed and said, All right. Let's go and have a look. He thought that the people fighting were probably the doppelgangers of Hatred and Kunwazi. The Taoist of the Langya cave abode followed Hatred here. Now the Lord Dongting didn't care about it. Besides, he had been fooled by him before, so he was very angry. It would be strange if he didn't find someone to vent his anger on. But after diving at the bottom of the lake for a quarter of an hour, he realized that he was wrong when he came to the surface of the lake. It was still night. It had only been 2 or 3 hours since the Lord Dongting took him to the bottom of the lake. The place where he came out of the water was in the center of Dongting. Looking around, it was vast and misty. He couldn't even see the hills and the horizon. On the top of the sky, there were the moon and stars, as if 2 people were in the sea. If he ignored the light on the east bank, that was the light. Other places were dark horizontal lines. There were clouds at the intersection of the water and the night sky. The boundary was still clear, but the eastern part was bright. The sky was also slightly yellow, as if the setting sun was still hidden behind the distant mountains. Li Yunxin only needed a glance to realize that it was only the length of a finger from where she was standing. But in fact, it should be more than a kilometer long. On the east bank of Dongting, a kilometer-long area was on fire at this time. He had seen this scene when Ling Kongzi and Bai Yunxin fought. Let's go and see. He frowned and gently breathed. He only said 3 words. The city of Wei was also on the east bank of Dongting. Red Lady didn't say anything. It seemed that she didn't expect this scene either. She waved her hand and called out the Yi Bai Jade boat. Li Yunxin stepped on the bow of the boat. Driven by Wacken, the magic weapon shot to the east bank like an arrow. It was even faster than Li Yunxin's real body on the water. In just a quarter of an hour, the outline of the east bank gradually became clear in front of him. It was indeed on fire. Yesterday afternoon, Li Yunxin rained heavily, and the surrounding land was soaked. In the evening, Kunwazi overturned Dongting again. The splashing waves even destroyed the surrounding trees and buildings. The land became a piece of mud. However, this piece of land was now ablaze with raging flames. The fire seemed to be burning the soil and water in the mud. It rose more than 10 meters high on the open ground. When Li Yunxin and Red Lady drove the Yi Bai Jade boat closer, they felt a terrible fire wall coming to them. It even covered the sky, but the inhibition of Dongting had worked after all. At this time, Li Yunxin could see what it looked like. It was like a huge cover. An inverted semicircular cover surrounded Dongting. The fire wall was surging on the shore, but it could only stick to the invisible inhibition and burn. The heat could get in, but the fire couldn't. Li Yunxin and Red Lady looked at each other. They realized that such a momentum might not be made by Hatred and Kunwazi. Hatred was not an idiot. How could he fight with the doppelganger of Kunwazi's soul at this time? But other than that, I don't know what happened to the city of Wei. Li Yunxin looked at the fire wall in front of him and sighed. I still have a few helpers and a friend outside. Now I am trapped here, and He didn't finish his words. He and Red Lady's Yi Bai Jade boat were hid away at the same time. The indescribable great power suddenly came. The last thing Li Yunxin saw was that in the overwhelming fire, the invisible barrier of Dongting seemed to be hit by an invisible giant fist. The power was so great that the barrier was like a real thing with shape and substance. It was dented inwardly by a tiny arc. And this tiny was only relative to the entire inhibition of Dongting. But in Li Yunxin's place, it was the fire on the other shore that rushed over, stirring up a terrible impact. The impact immediately blew away the 2 unprepared people. Even the water in the lake was set off a huge wave of more than 10 meters high. In the blink of an eye, Red Lady's figure disappeared. No one knew where she was sent flying to. But Li Yunxin saw the last scene before his sight was blocked by the wave. This impact didn't seem to be aimed at him and Red Lady. He saw a huge figure, almost as long as his real body, but it was the height of a human figure. It hit the inhibition of Dongting. It seemed that it was blown back by a terrible blow and hit the barrier. However, it was not the first time. At that moment, when the human figure touched the barrier and moved awkwardly, before it could make an effective counterattack, at least hundreds of attacks came again. Due to the continuous bombardment, The human figure trembled. His trembling formed a terrifying shockwave within the barrier. That was to say, it was unknown who was fighting with the gigantic humanoid. But just the shockwaves were enough to send a great demon at the true realm flying. What kind of a great demon is this? This was the first thought in Li Yunxin's mind at that time. Chapter 207. But he didn't want to escape like Red Lady. No matter how big the wave was, it was still a wave. 2 God realm demons with relatively high cultivation were sent flying by this thing. How was that supposed to work? Presumably, Red Lady also felt shocked in her heart. Borrowing the momentum of being sent flying, she dived into the water. But Li Yunxin didn't want to hide. First, he felt that the people outside the restriction might have come because of him. Second, how could he lose his momentum because of this? When he was flying in the air, he roared angrily, and his body immediately emitted a weeping golden light. A few strands of the white mane that only appeared when he transformed into a demon god appeared on his temples, and fine small scales appeared on his cheeks. He released the power of the divine beast in his body to a certain extent, so that his body became stronger, and at the same time, he retained the meridians of a human sea of qi. It could be considered as a way to attack and defend. With a loud bang, he broke through the monstrous wave, and reappeared by the lake with a large amount of water, mist and light. From the time he was submerged to the moment he re-emerged from the water, only a short period of 2 breaths had passed. But the battle on the shore seemed to have come to an end. The raging flames were still burning, but the huge human figure had disappeared. But if one looked carefully, one would find that there were some changes in the flames. It was as if there were many little flaming birds flying in the flames. Their dark red bodies and orange feathers. If one didn't pay attention, one would think that they were cyclones in the flames. Innumerable little birds flew up and down chasing, even smaller human figures. Just now, Li Yunxin only saw the size of the human figure, but didn't see its appearance clearly. But now, looking at those little people again, he vaguely felt that they were the adults just now, just that they were scattered. They split into thousands of people in the flames and fled in all directions. But the wall of fire at this time seemed to have become a cage. The little people in the fire roared, and their figures gradually became thinner. Those who were not agile were caught by the birds, and with a peck or a tilt of the neck, the little people were eaten into their stomachs. The flames burned silently, climbing up the restriction barrier in front of Li Yunxin. Other than that, there was no other sound. After half an hour, the densely packed human figures in the fire were finally eaten up by the birds. The last human figure fled to the edge of the flames. Countless firebirds blotted out the sky and swallowed it whole. At this moment, the little man finally made a sound. The sound did not match his figure. It was low and hoarse, but it was like a great bell. The ground trembled slightly. "One day I will." But his voice was quickly drowned out by the flock of birds. 2 breaths later, the last figure disappeared. Li Yunxin's heart skipped a beat. That figure called himself Zhen. He did not know which emperor it was. After another quarter of an hour, the flames also dissipated. It was still night time. As the intensity of the fire decreased, the howling wind in the air also gradually disappeared. She hears the sound of waves and dongting again. There were stars and a moon in the sky, and in front of him, the receding flames parted in the middle, like 2 bright, gorgeous curtains drawn slowly to either side. The exposed ground had already been burned dry by the fire, and faint white smoke was rising from it. A few people were standing on the ground. Their cheeks were reflected warm yellow by the flame curtains on both sides, but their backs were coated with a layer of cold light by the stars and the moon. Against the silent and dark mountains and forests in the distance, the bright fire on both sides, they just looked at Li Yunxin. After a few breaths, the flames completely dissipated. Those birds that were originally flying in the fire joined together and went straight into the palm of the first person. He was not afraid of the high temperature at all. He shook a figure in his hand, and the firebirds were collected in it. Finally, they turned into a strange and mysterious character. Li Yunxin did not recognize the character. It should be the true rune of Daotong. But Li Yunxin recognized that person. It was Kun Wuxia, and he realized that if he guessed right, This should be the original body of Kun Wuxi, not the real body of his soul. The original body of Kun Wuxi did not come alone. Behind him were 7 Taoists in different clothes. But they all had one thing in common. They looked at Li Yunxin like looking at a corpse. After staring at him for a while, Kun Wuxi said, "Open the inhibition and hand over Dongting." Li Yunxin stood on the waves and looked behind him. The direction of the city of Wei was the same as usual. There was nothing unusual. There was no one behind them. He spread his hands. "I can't open it. I also want to go out. Where are my people?" "Your people?" The Taoist in the Xianjing realm smiled coldly. "I heard that you had some demons under your command, but they all scattered and disappeared. There was also a Taoist who escaped with those demons. There is a ghost emperor in the city of Wei. Do you know who I just killed?" Li Yunxin was silent for a while and raised his head. "Oh, so you killed Emperor Li? Anyway, it can't be that Emperor Yi. Look at how arrogant you are now. You don't need to make a big fuss to kill him." Kun Wuxi smiled slightly. Emperor Li killed several cultivators of Daotong, but he fled to the direction of the city of Wei. I was there, and so were my disciples. That's why we ran into each other. It's a pity that you used to be in the state of Taishang Wangqing, but now you are only in the state of Shi Xianjing. So I killed him. It took me a lot of effort to kill him. If it wasn't for this thing, I wouldn't have let you enter Dongting so easily. Now Li Yunxin, hand over Dongting. You have a relationship with the 2 saints. Although you are a demon, it doesn't mean you can't enter Daotong. This Taoist isn't that Ling Kongzi. This Taoist's words are valid once spoken. The 7 Taoists behind him didn't say anything, but their faces didn't look good. It seemed that they couldn't bear to see this head of the Langya cave, talking to a demon so amiably. Li Yunxin was silent for a while after listening to him. Then he frowned. "Are we going to fight?" After saying this, Kun Wuxi looked normal, but the faces of the 7 Taoists behind him changed instantly. It seemed that he told the truth that was regarded as a big secret by those people. And they didn't know how Li Yunxin knew it. Because of this great surprise, one of them couldn't help but shout, "How did you know this? Tell me, are you really in cahoots with those demons?" The age of the person who spoke couldn't be seen. He looked like a middle-aged man. He had 3 strands of short beard, thin lips, and always pursed, which made him look arrogant and unruly. He was tall, even half a head taller than Kun Wuxi. At this moment, he stared at Li Yunxin angrily, but the look in his eyes was a little strange. It was not exactly the disgust when facing demons and enemies. At the same time, there was a trace of soft emotion, disappointment. However, Li Yunxin didn't know when he met this guy, and when he made him have any expectation on him. He glanced at the man inside. "Is it that hard to guess? Since you all came to the city of Wei and Dongting one after another, you probably know that some of the souls of Shinryu are sealed in this Dongting. Now you can't wait to take this Dongting by force. You even helped me to reveal the name of Lord Dongting. I think you were thinking about this place at that time. You even thought about Shinryu. If you didn't want to fight, why would you do such a sensitive thing?" Before Kun Wuxi said anything, that person interrupted again. "You actually know that there are souls of Shinryu in this Dongting. Humph, you are indeed. Oh, hey, you actually chose this path. Why don't you be a human but a demon?" Li Yunxin frowned and looked at him for a while, and then looked at Kun Wuxi. He spread out his hands and tilted his head. It turned out that body language seemed to be effective everywhere. Kun Wuxi understood Li Yunxin's meaning. He coughed and glanced at the person next to him. Tongji. It turned out that the person was called Tongji. However, Kun Wuxi's reminder didn't seem to have any effect. The Taoist who said Tongji was still a little excited. The 6 people around him all looked at him differently, but it was still a strange look. Was that sympathy? Tongji snorted and looked at Li Yunxin. "Look at I. So that you know, I's Taoist name is Yuqinzi. Back then, your mother was abducted by a heretical cultivator. She stubbornly refused to come to her senses and gave birth to you. Now, although she has unfortunately passed away, on account that I once had a relationship with her, this has become a result of fate for me. I just didn't expect that you and your Humph, you are also a heretical cultivator. How can you not be a human? Your body, hair, and skin were given to you by your parents. Your mother was pregnant for 10 months and gave birth to your good body. Did she ask you to abandon her body? Now, immediately unlock the inhibition of Dongting and tell the great master everything you know. If you tell me everything and reflect on your past sins, then I will remember your mother's love and guarantee that you will lose your Taoist power and cultivate the Tao again in my Langya cave abode. I can also use this monster body to atone for you and your mother's sins to Daotong and Kenzo. Isn't it better to be a clean person? Li Yunxin listened to him in surprise and finally couldn't help but ask Kuan Wuzi, "Who the hell is this idiot?" Yu Chenzi was furious immediately. "You." Kuan Wuzi sighed and shouted in a low voice, "Enough! How long do you want to make trouble?" Originally, when these 8 people appeared, they were accompanied by flames and darkness. In Li Yunxin's eyes, they were really cool. Kuan Wuzi came in person, and the 7 people behind him seemed to have their own supernatural powers. They just stood there and didn't say anything, just looking at him coldly. It was a great deterrent. However, after hearing Yu Chenzi's words, the other 6 people also came to persuade him. They tried to calm him down and not be rude in front of the great master. There were also some who persuaded him and looked at Li Yunxin with slight disgust. For a moment, the imposing manner of a master cultivator was all gone. Instead, it became a family gossip in the market. However, it could also be seen that the 7 people behind Kuan Wuzi had a good relationship with each other. This should be an anomaly in the world of cultivation. He originally thought that the cultivators of Daotong and Kenzo should be cold and heartless. After all, they had to go through the trials. But now, it seemed that they were like brothers. Maybe there was some other inside story. When Kuan Wuzi saw him staring at the 7 people, he frowned. "They are the Langya 7 under eye. This Tongji was originally acquainted with your mother, Shang Guanyu. Then tell him to control his mouth." Li Yunxin frowned. "And pay attention to your own intelligence." When Yu Chenzi heard this, he was stunned at first. Then he widened his eyes. Even his 6 brothers couldn't stop him. He shouted, "You little brat! Do you know that your mother was originally going to become my Dao companion? If it wasn't for that demon, I'm so angry. Now you are actually so stubborn. In the future, I will definitely teach you a lesson and let you know that you and your father." Seeing that his words were getting more and more ridiculous, Kuan Wuzi directly waved his sleeve. Yu Chenzi could only open his mouth, but no sound could be heard. He thought for a while and said, "The matter between him and your mother is complicated. There is a reason for his attitude. However, the reason why I brought his clone here is to let you know that I's previous promise wasn't empty nonsense. Perhaps you already know, or perhaps you don't know enough. Your mother, Shang Guanyu, is the descendant of the 2 saints, and you are also the descendant of the 2 saints. The attitude of Daotong and Kenzo towards you is the attitude of Yu Chenzi towards you. They mourn your misfortune and are angry at your incompetence. If you were a good person, no one would want to become a demon. I also slightly understood some things. Previously, you told my clone that there was another faction that was causing trouble and wanted to stir up a storm in the world. The failure of your parents was probably the tragedy caused by that force. And because of that tragedy, you, a young man, were forced to do some wrong things in order to survive alone. You killed some people you shouldn't have killed, and then you made such a choice. I have already said that it's all because of one word. I had no choice. If it was someone else, even if the 4 of them were involved, it would still be very difficult to forgive. But after all, you have the blood of the 2 saints. We cultivators don't pay much attention to bloodline and emotion. However, now that this matter is in front of us, it is also bloodline and also fate. So, I told you to remove the inhibition and hand over Dongting. Then go back to the mountain with I. If you want to disperse your personal ability, disperse it and cultivate the Tao again. If you don't want to disperse it, you can also become a demon. After all, you were a human before. Demons are demons after all. Standing with them, you can't really understand the joy of being a human. Speaking of suitable, Daotong is more suitable for you. Li Yunxin, you have also seen a lot of storms. Although you are young, you are more mature and prudent than many people I have met. Think about it. Let go of your emotions and think about it. Do you want to be a demon or a human? It is said that being a demon is free and unfettered. But when a demon walks in the world, he must always be on guard against being stared at by the masters of Daotong. If you show your original form, it will make people panic. It's okay to be a natural demon, but you have been a human for 14 years. Can you really stand such a life? You have to know that the choice you make now will affect hundreds or even thousands of years in the future. Now, because of the bloodline of the two saints, I sincerely tell you one thing. Kuan Wuxi sighs softly and looks at Li Yunxin with clear eyes. Come back. Li Yunxin listens to him seriously and also sighs. To be honest, he is indeed tempted. Chapter 208. He was tempted. He wanted to use Kuan Wuxi's emotions to set up another trap. Any slightly strong emotion would be an obvious flaw for him. But there were two problems. He didn't know whether what Kuan Wuxi said was true or not. He had seen too many situations that sounded sincere, but the truth might not be like this. Besides, the other party was no longer the governor, no longer Ling Kongzi, no longer Yunzi, not a single individual with limited information, and he was no longer the Li Yunxin hidden in the thick fog. The other party was almost the entire Daotong, and his ability to obtain information was amazing. In this aspect, he had almost no advantage. The other party still had the strength to completely crush him, and violence couldn't solve the problem completely. Therefore, for a long time to come, he probably wouldn't have the advantage of asymmetric information, unless he could get more secrets. He believed that Black Bai Yanjun, Lord Dongting, and the Freemasonry were all hiding great secrets. But he still needed time. At the moment, he wasn't strong enough to become a third party, so a choice that he wasn't very willing to face was placed in front of him. To turn to the demons or to turn to Daotong. Daotong could be considered the official of this world, but because of some experiences in his previous life, he had a natural sense of discomfort towards all authority and official. These two words might not necessarily have a negative meaning, but dislike didn't need any reason. Moreover, it was Daotong and Kenzo who made things difficult for him, and it was the demons who saved him. But he also didn't like the demons. Kuan Wuxi was right. The demons were free and unfettered. He wasn't a teenager, so he wouldn't believe that kind of nonsense. A person or an organization might be misunderstood in a short period of time and bear a stigma, but it was impossible to be misunderstood for thousands of years. The demons were notorious, and Li Yunxin roughly knew what kind of people they were. But now he had become a focus, a core, and he could no longer stay out of it. Why did the Lord Dongting keep him in this restrictive spell? Li Yunxin thought for a long time. This was probably the longest time he had spent in this world. He weighed many things within his abilities, simulating and planning a few possible routes. If what Kuan Wuxi said is true, what will he do after he goes to Daotong? How should he deal with it? If he ignores them and hides in Dongting on the side of demons, what will happen in the future? How should he deal with it? The biggest uncertainty came from his lineage. If he was an ordinary person, Kuan Wuxi probably wouldn't express goodwill like this. At least, it seemed like he was expressing goodwill. But he was also afraid that because of this bloodline, he would turn to the demons and become a target that Daotong and Kenzo must eliminate. He pondered silently for an hour, and Kuan Wuxi also patiently waited for an hour. Soon after, the sky turned white. For the first time in his life, Li Yunxin finally raised his head. He looked at Kuan Wuxi. I can't open this Dongting. But even if I can, I won't open it. I have done a lot of things in the past few months, not only to survive, but also to get rid of fear. Daotong and Kenzo have systems and systems. I may have privileges there, but I'm still a part of it. Since I'm a part of it, I have to be restricted and follow the rules set by others. And I've always been afraid of this kind of thing. I don't want to hand over my fate and decision-making power to others. Everyone has the freedom to be free from fear. If you don't understand it, it's called natural human rights. In the current world, it's unrealistic to talk about this freedom, but it's the goal I've been working hard for. I was scared by demons before, And I was also scared by people from Daotong and Kenzo. They all made me feel threatened and scared. Therefore, Kuan Wuzi has already understood what Li Yunxin wanted to say. He feels strange about the word freedom, and he will completely understand the freedom and pursuit that Li Yunxin said after a long time. But now he still can't understand and agree with it. He said in a low voice, "Demons also have systems and hierarchy. They are even stricter than human beings. I can talk to the 7 suns behind me peacefully. Maybe there are some demons who can do this, but there won't be many. Daotong and Kenzo may not represent light, but demons must represent darkness. If you still think that you are a human in your heart, or if you still have some humanity, but it's still different." Li Yunxin smiled. "I can be a lord among demons. But in Daotong, do you know why Yunzi was killed by me? A demon in the transcendent state like the 9th young master could set up a territory by the Wei River. But Yunzi, a Taoist in the true state, tried his best to get a little power to guard the city of Wei, and even sacrificed 36 cultivators to lure me into the trap. I don't want to be in the same situation as him." Daotong and Kenzo, Li Yunxin thought for a while, and suddenly laughed. "The company is big, the benefits are good, and the salary is high. But I'm not a quiet person. What I want is not a high salary, but space and career prospects. I want to be a demon king, since I'm here, and have so many opportunities and adventures. And I'm a genius. If I don't reach the highest point in this world, I can't forgive myself. Can you understand me?" Kuan Wuzi may not understand the words that Li Yunxin said, but anyone who had learned to explain words would probably be able to roughly understand the meaning of each word from those words. He had a general idea. The master of Langia Cave thought for a while, and said with a serious face, "If I've never met you, I would think that you're bewitched by those demons. But since I've dealt with you, I know that these are your own ideas." If that's the case, Li Yunxin listened carefully. Emperor Li cultivated the body of the Ghost King, and the world was shocked. He killed 4 and injured 1, and it was a terrible thing that had never happened in 1,000 years. But just now you saw it clearly. Such a big demon was also killed by me Daotong within 2 months. It's not just me. The Ghost King came to the Wei River, and wherever he went, the disciples of Daotong all risked their lives. This is the power of Daotong and Kenzo for thousands of years. There are many things that you think are important, but to us, it's just a gust of wind. A gust of wind is always a gust of wind, and it can't hurt the mountain. As for the so-called, Kuan Wuzi shook his head. War? Maybe it is for the demons. But for Daotong and Kenzo, it's just a way to free up their hands and clean up the things that should have been cleaned up a long time ago. Li Yunxin, you're standing on the side that's destined to fail. Li Yunxin smiled. It doesn't matter. I don't intend to stand here forever. Kuan Wuzi sighed. I shouldn't have asked you. I said I want you to open the inhibition and hand over Dongting. You think I'm threatening you, but here in Daotong, I'm being very lenient. Since it's like this, I'll tell you now. After tomorrow, the cultivators in the Qing Kingdom will arrive at the Wei River in Dongting. Just for one thing. To confirm whether the soul of Shinryu is really in the Dongting Lake. If there is, we must get it. Then the cultivators in the world will clean up the demons. No matter how good their reputation is, or how high their cultivation is. If you want to blame someone, blame Emperor Li. Although the matter of Emperor Li didn't shake the foundation, it has made Daotong and Kenzo know that at this time, the situation of the world has reached a critical point. The demons should no longer be indulged. There are only humans in this world, and that's enough. Daotong and Kenzo have the determination to sacrifice all the cultivators in the Xian realm. For us, it's just a small loss that can be made up for in a few hundred years. In the past, we've experienced more. When Kuan Wuzi said these words, it didn't seem like he was threatening Li Yunxin. Instead, it seemed like he wanted to tell Li Yunxin something in advance, so that he could be prepared. Li Yunxin couldn't guess why Kuan Wuzi did this, and Kuan Wuzi also didn't know why he did this. But he just felt that it was a pity. Everyone in the world knew about the 2 sages. But the 2 sages had lived in this world for 3,000 years. 3,000 years ago, the 2 sages were just unknown cultivators. 2,400 years ago, they reached the realm of Taishang Wangqing. And then, in the next 2,400 years, there were no more Taishang cultivators. There were even only 11 cultivators who reached the realm of Guangsheng Mysterious. But even before that, although there weren't many cultivators who reached the realm of Taishang Wangqing, there would always be 4 or 5 of them every 1,000 years. Kuan Wuxi wasn't happy to see such a situation. In his eyes, this Li Yunxin was actually a good seedling for cultivation. But it was a pity that such a person had entered the path of the demons, just like that person 1,000 years ago. After both sides talked about these things, Kuan Wuxi didn't delay any further. He waved his sleeves, and a thin layer of mist suddenly appeared between him and Li Yunxin. The mist climbed up the layer of restriction around Dongting Lake, and like a layer of mist covering a piece of glass, the outside couldn't be seen clearly. This hazy milky white mist quickly spread out for a few miles, and finally covered the entire Dongting Lake. Li Yunxin realized that this time, he was jointly isolated from the world by the demons and human cultivators. He let out a soft breath, turned around, and went straight into Dongting Lake. It took him half an hour to find Red Lady. When he found her, this carp spirit was on the white beach of Mount June. Kuan Wuxi overturned the water in Dongting, and Mount June wasn't spared either. One of the 8 sceneries of Dongting in the past was now beyond recognition. There used to be lush vegetation on the mountain, but now the shorter trees have been broken, not to mention the shorter shrubs and grasses. These plants rolled down from the mountain, piling up on the shore and the beach. Of course, there were also dead fish, birds, and beasts. Although only one night has passed, the weather in July and August in Dongting is like a steamer basket. Their corpses are soaked in water, and gradually they start to emit an unfriendly smell. Red Lady is in the mess on the shore, looking up at the School of the Emperor Star. The School of the Emperor Star is unharmed. When Li Yunxin first saw the Lord Dongting in Mount June, he thought there was nothing special about this wooden palace. He thought it was a place where the big demon Lord Dongting played and ate people in his spare time. But now he knows it is not an ordinary thing. The cornice on the stone gate with the words School of the Emperor Star on the shore has not been damaged. It is still the same as when he first came here. He also comes to this mess, and the feeling of stepping on the ground makes him feel a little comfortable. My father didn't allow me to come here before. Red Lady looks at the gate and says, but now he can't control me. She then turns around and looks at Li Yunxin. What happened over there? I'm afraid those Taoists don't dare to listen. Li Yunxin frowns slightly and waves his sleeves. A gust of evil wind rises on the ground, sweeping the messy plants and corpses nearby far away into the lake. There is fog on the shore of Dongting Lake, but the sky is blue. He can still see the sun rising from the east. The debris swept away by his evil wind stirred up a wave in the distance, and then calmed down. He squints at the water for a while, and then turns to look at Red Lady. The war has started. Red Lady is slightly stunned and asks him with her eyes wide open, what war? Li Yunxin stretches out his hand and draws a circle in the air. Demons. Then he draws another circle. Daotong. The war has started. Daotong plans to kill all the demons in the world. Hearing this, Red Lady is not so interested. Oh! She turns her head and points to the white beach in front of her. I used to think that this place is less lively. I like the wooden pavilion in Egret Island, but it is destroyed. Now my father is not here, and this place is sealed. We can also build a wooden pavilion here. We can use the Polonia on Mount June. We can drink and talk in the pavilion when we are free. Li, what do you think? Aren't you afraid of the war? This is a major event that concerns every demon. You are also a Een spirit and a demon. Red Lady blinks and laughs. What's the use of being afraid? I am a woman, and my magic power is not strong. I am powerful in front of little demons and monsters, but in front of a big demon like Li, I am just a pawn. Besides, I can't decide the general trend and disputes of the world. The happiest period of my life is right in front of me. Red Lady hesitates for a while, and finally steps forward to the gate of the School of the Emperor Star. At first, she takes a few steps carefully, but after finding nothing unusual, she walks faster and faster. She stops in front of the threshold and glances at the front hall, hidden in the flowers and trees in the distance. Finally, she crosses the threshold. She stands quietly in the shadow of the trees behind the threshold for a while, and then turns to Li Yunxin with a happy smile. Look, it's right in front of us. Li and I are trapped in this Dongting, and the human cultivators and demons outside can fight as much as they want. When the result of the battle is out, if the demons win, we can still continue to live freely. If the human cultivator wins, Li can kill me as a sign of loyalty. I will also be happy. How good would that be? Li Yunxin spread her hands speechlessly and sighed. All right. It's none of your business, but it's mine. Tell me how to get out of this inhibition first. Chapter 209. Hong Nyangzi stood in the shadows and tilted her head slightly. She looked at Li Yunxin and smiled mischievously. Didn't I tell Li Lang earlier? My father refined the Jianmu into my body, and now I can sense the inhibition of Dongting. This means that I am the circle eye of this inhibition. Although I am the circle eye, I really don't know how to get out of this inhibition. My father should have a way, but he didn't tell me. She thinks for a while, reaches out to pull a small red flower from a branch beside her, inserts it into her hair bun, and turns to walk to the front hall. But my dear, you are so smart. You should know that there is another way to solve this inhibition. That is, destroy the circle eye. My father spent a lot of effort to refine the circle eye into my body. In the past, destroying the circle eye was more difficult than destroying the circle. But now if you want to go out, she tilts her head, just kill me. Red Lady, the only daughter of Lord Dongting, loves Li Yunxin strongly because of her obsession. After saying this, she turns around a cluster of flowers and disappears into the moon gate on the west side of the main hall. Li Yunxin stands on the white beach of Mount June for a while, and then realizes that he is going to face a choice again. But he is not sure that he can make a good choice. Lord Dongting did this deliberately, this old devil. Kun Wuxia tries to persuade himself to turn to Daotong with words, and the general trend. Lord Dongting also does the same thing, but more directly and crudely. Killing Red Lady can get out of Dongting, but for him, it also means destroying the humanity in his heart. Does Li Yunxin need humanity? Does he still have humanity in his heart? In fact, he often asks himself these two questions, but he doesn't expect that he will face them directly so soon. He looks up at the rising sun and feels a little annoyed for the first time. Not far away, there comes the sound of waves. It is probably the evil flood dragon at the bottom of the lake. But after all, Dongting is vast, not a small pond. He looked at the flood dragon, and with a gust of wind, he rushed into the sky and fled into the distance. If he needs a long time to make a choice, he has to figure out what Dongting looks like first. In this day and age, any reliable map was considered a contraband. The maps that were circulated among the people, which seemed to be child's play, were also regarded as treasures. If he wanted to know the situation of the waters that he was temporarily in charge of, he couldn't just look at those things. He had to see it for himself. The area of Dongting is hundreds of times larger than the city of Wei. Red Lady shouldn't be the only Yin deity who could speak and was rational, right? Therefore, he began to patrol the waters where he might have to stay for a long time. But he didn't expect that it would take 6 whole days. At first, he wanted to see the hydrology and landforms along the coast. Hence, he looked at it in detail. In the past, the furthest he had gone was Nanshan Hill and no further. This time, he just flew all the way over, not letting go of the scenery by the lake. The area outside the restrictive spell had been sealed by the fog, but there was still 1 zhang of land on the shore. There were either flowers and trees growing on the ground, or a shallow beach, or a small pier. The first day, he felt it was interesting, but he didn't find anyone. On the second day, he felt it was boring. What was the most fun thing in the world? It was people. There were few people around the lake at the moment, and there were patches of shallow beach and trees by the lake. He had something on his mind and couldn't calm down. So he didn't have the mood to enjoy the nature and scenery. He was bored after looking at it for a whole day. So he sped up on the second day. The scenery whizzed past under his body, and the strong wind blew on his face. He was thinking about his own troubles while looking at the scenery. But even so, it still took him 4 days to go around the Dongting. He flew in the sky, and his speed was as fast as the wind and lightning. If it were measured by the feet of the mortals, it wouldn't be strange for him to travel for half a year. But it seemed that he didn't gain anything. In fact, Guananshan had already left the territory of the Wei River Prefecture by dusk on the first day. He had passed through 6 prefectures and 2 prefectures in the last few days. The Dongting was vast and boundless, and all the prefectures should have docks by the lake. It was more convenient to transport goods by water. However, because of the magic of Kunwazi, Li Yunqing could only see a few wreckages of the docks by the lake. He couldn't see anyone, so they must be dead. The forbidding formation by the lake was still covered with fog. The people living by the lake must be panicking, not knowing what had happened. Many fishermen and boatmen who relied on the Dongting to make a living must have lost their livelihood. On the 4th day, he finally saw the vague shadow of Mount June in the distance. He circled around and came back. At this moment, he realized that he had only seen a small part of the Dongting by looking at the shore. If there were any unexpected people or things in the lake, they must be in the lake. Mount June was a large island. If people moved there, it could accommodate thousands of families. However, such a Mount June was not even a sesame seed on a big cake in Dongting. It could only be the tip of a needle. There were many islands like this in Dongting. Who knows, there might be a surprise hidden there. It could also be surprise or fear. He spent another 2 days circling around Mount June, circling and circling. As a result, it was like flying on the sea. All he could see was indigo water. He couldn't even see the fog on the forbidding formation. He used the sun as a reference, but it was not very accurate. In the end, he spent 2 days in vain. He only saw a reef island protruding from the water. There was no other harvest. He didn't want to continue. He finally understood how big Dongting was. 100 or 200 of these Dongting caves would fill up the entire Qing kingdom, right? He spent a whole 6 days doing this futile thing, but his furrowed brows never relaxed. He hadn't made a decision yet. However, an accident happened on the 7th day. He found another island. This island should have been uninhabited before, because it was in the hinterland of Dongting. The surrounding water was deep. It was like a pillar protruding from the bottom of the lake and exposed on the water alone. It was not easy to build a dock around such a deep water island. There were no fish, and it was far from the shore. It was doomed to be uninhabited in this era. The trees on the island were verdant. Under the sun of the 7th day, they were like a piece of finely carved green jade, which was delightful. Li Yunqing saw this scene, and his irritation in his heart disappeared for no reason. It surprised him. He had been indulging the uneasiness in his heart, and was happy to experience the morbid pleasure brought by this uneasiness. But now he was refreshed. He thought maybe his subconscious thought he couldn't go on like this in the current situation. There were people waiting for him outside. The Ghost Emperor was in the city of Wei, and his demon disciples were also outside. It was said that Lu Laodao ran away with them, but he didn't know whether he was safe or not. He agreed with his subconscious's decision and decided to escape for the last day. After 7 days, he wanted to return to the life of fighting in which every nerve was tense all the time. Life was a battle. Comfort meant death. He made such a decision and landed on the island with clouds and mist. Then he saw a broken ship on the shore. It was a ship. This meant that the ship was not small when it was alive. It was the kind of gaily painted pleasure boat that could only be owned by rich families. Now it was lying on the shore, with only the keel left. The hull was smashed into pieces. He walked around the ship and saw a line of footprints. So he followed the footprints into the forest. When he walked into the forest, the footprints disappeared. But something else was left. Some shells were scattered in the grass, as if someone ate them while walking and threw them away. There was no beach on this island. Li Yunqing thought for a while, and guessed that they were probably shellfish that were originally attached to the wreckage of the ship. He followed the shells and saw a huge stone in the forest. It was about 3 or 4 stories high, and was surrounded by large trees. It was a big green stone, but it was empty at the bottom. There was a fire, and there was a person beside the fire. Li Yunqing looked around, and didn't find anything unusual. So he walked over and stood at the entrance of the stone cave to take a look. That fire had been burning for a while and was about to be extinguished. An old man with white hair was lying on his side on the ground. His clothes were still intact. He didn't look like a fisherman, but a rich person. He must be someone from that ship. At this time, the old man woke up. He propped himself up and looked at the cave entrance. He squinted his eyes as if the sunlight outside the cave was blinding his eyes. Then he rubbed his eyes and sat up straight. He stared at Li Yunxin for a while and said in a hoarse voice, "Ah, you young man, are you also in trouble here?" Li Yunxin didn't say anything. He slowly walked in and walked around the cave. It was called a cave, but it was actually a very wide stone gap. The fire and sunlight illuminated a part of it, but there were more hidden in the shadows. It was a hot sunny day outside, but it was cool inside the cave. The old man didn't find it strange when he saw him like this. He only smiled and said, "I thought only this ship was in trouble. I didn't expect there to be people. I think I must have angered the Dragon King yesterday, because of the downpour." Li Yunxin walked in front of him and squinted at him. "Where are you from?" The old man grunted in acknowledgement. "Normal people shouldn't look like you in this situation," Li Yunxin said slowly. "This place is very far from the shore. You should know that fishermen are unlikely to come. You are an old man. You will die after staying here for a few days. But you look so calm and relaxed." The old man heard this and laughed. When he laughed, the wrinkles on his face piled up, but he looked very kind and amiable. His eyes squinted into a line. He only used the corner of his eyes to look at people. "You young man, sigh. What's there to be afraid of dying? This old man has lived to 68 years old. People say I'm an old man. But I, this old man, was tricked into this ship by my children. They said they sent me to this lake to play. But in fact, they dug a hole in the bottom of the ship. My old servant escorted me to this shore. My children went back in the small boat. Who would have thought that it would suddenly rain? I survived in this cave, but my children died in the lake. In this case, what's there to be afraid of?" Li Yunxin thought carefully. He picked up a blue stone next to the fire and sat down. He picked up a piece of dry wood from the ground and threw it into the fire. He laughed and said, "So you're not an ordinary person. Only rich or noble people would do such things. Were you a noble in the government or a hero in Jianghu?" The old man laughed. "Let's not talk about it. But I can see that you're not an ordinary person. Where are you from?" "I'm from the Tang of the East," Li Yunxin replied casually. "If we're going to stay on this island for a while, what are you going to eat?" "I saw shells when I came here. Now it seems that I've eaten all of them. What will I do in the future? Will you hunt for a living? You don't look very healthy." The old man laughed. "I don't like the fishy smell of water. I don't eat fish, shrimps, and shells. I've lived for decades. I can't lose my chastity when I'm old." The shells that the young master saw on the road were not leftovers, but were for his use. But they weren't easy to use, so I threw them away. Speaking of food, I have an old servant. As I said before, he protected me on the shore. With him, I don't have to worry about food these days. Li Yunxin looked at the old man. "He went hunting?" "I said he's an old servant." The old man stood up. His stomach growled. From his point of view, this was a rude thing to do, but he didn't care about it now. He slowly walked to a shadowy spot in the rock gap. It was cold and wet, dripping water. Maybe it would form a stalactite after thousands of years. "I'm an old servant, but I don't have a good weapon. Where can I go hunting?" The old man stopped and sighed. "I've been with him for more than 40 years. He always said that his life is mine. In the end, this life really became mine." He stretched out his hand and felt around in the shadow. Li Yunxin heard a crisp sound. He thought it was the sound of shells hitting rocks. Then he heard the sound of a sack being cut. Then the old man turned around. Li Yunxin saw that he was holding a bloody piece of meat in his hand. There was still some dark white skin attached to it. The old man looked at him for a while and became silent. He walked to the fire and put the meat on the stone. He used the sharp edge of the big shell in his other hand and slowly cut it. As he cut, he said, "Beasts, if you don't eat me, then I eat you." The human world was exactly the same. But people eat better. They don't eat your flesh, but eat your essence. But it's good to look good. People eat their essence, but they are still there. As long as they don't die, they can still recover. But some people, after living in this world for a long time, forget what people were like when they were still beasts. They need to eat their essence, and they also need to eat human flesh. They say that this world also eats people. There's no justice in this world. But how can there be justice in this world? Being like this in the human world is already much better than beasts being like this. We have to make it better, not worse. The old man cut a piece of meat. He shakily pierced it with a twig and roasted it over the fire. After roasting for a while, he looked up at Li Yunxin. If there's a person who doesn't want to be a human, but a beast, what does that person think? Chapter 210. The sun outside the stone crack is still bright, but the temperature inside the stone crack seems to be getting lower and lower. Li Yunxin silently watches him roasting the meat on the fire. He feels the scene in front of him is a bit familiar. But after all, he is no longer the boy who shivers in the cold rainy night and can only be trampled on. He keeps silent for a while and looks up at the old man's white hair and bark-like face. "What's your name?" The old man takes a deep breath, inhaling the fragrance of the meat. Then he says slowly, "I have forgotten the past and my name. Now I am a new student. Since I met you in this lake, I call myself the Old Man of the Lake." Li Yunxin thinks for a while and says calmly, "The Old Man of the Lake is indeed an artistic and stylish name. But if I have to call you the Old Man of the Lake every time I call you, it will be a bit delusional. What's your name?" The old man looks at him, blinks and smiles inexplicably. "Oh, my surname is Su. Then I will call you Lord Su." Li Yunxin looks at the meat. "Lord Su, do you know that I am a monster? This Dongting is now my Taoist field." The old man looks at him for a while and opens his mouth. "Oh, I think you are also a monster. You come here alone on such a day. There is no sweat on your body, and your clothes are clean, without a trace of dust. You also have a fairy face. You must not be a human. But you are a monster, and you are in charge of this Dongting. You must be powerful. I have been trapped here for many days and can't solve my worries. Monster Taoist, can you give me a jar of good wine to drink?" Li Yunxin listens to his words and smiles slightly. He flicks his wrist, and a folding fan appears in his hand. He wipes the fan and takes out a pot of wine. He puts the wine beside the fire in front of the old man and says, "This is Mu Nanchun from Mu Nan House in the city of Wei." He pauses and says, "I don't know if he is still here." The old man takes the wine and lifts the pot to pour the wine into his mouth. Then he takes a long breath and says, "Good wine. Good wine. Young master, give me wine, and I'll give you meat, take it." He tossed the branch in his hand over the bonfire. Li Yunxin stretched out his hand to catch it, looked at it carefully, and then put it on the fire to roast. The old man claps his hands and says, "You are the monster in charge of Dongting, but you don't look happy now. It was said that demons were carefree and did whatever they wanted. What was on the young master's mind? I don't think I have long to live. Why don't you tell me?" Li Yunxin looked at him. "With Master Su's ability, do I still need to tell you about my troubles?" The old man shook his head. "This Su Gong in front of you is just an old man. How could he have the ability to read your mind? If you don't feel at ease, you can kill me with a single palm strike. Then you can see what kind of person I am." Li Yunxin seriously considered his suggestion for a while. Then he flipped the roasted meat in his hand. "There are some troubles in front of me." He was silent for a moment, and then he actually said, "I have a few friends outside Dongting Lake, and I don't know where they are. But now I can't get out. I'm worried. I'm afraid that they have been killed by people or demons. I'm even more afraid that they will be caught and used to threaten me. Then I have to make a choice I don't like. Oh, it's really troublesome." The old man sighed. His voice was a little louder because of the wine. "Young master, you're afraid that you can't convince yourself." "I just hate tests." Li Yunxin smiled. "Some things are fine as long as they are as usual. But when it comes to the test, no one knows what choice they will make. So don't test human nature. I don't like it at all." He glanced at the old man. "I don't like stupid tests either." The old man smiled kindly and took the meat on the branch back. He reached out to tear off a slightly burnt shredded meat and tasted it. He said, "It's a little tasteless without salt. But it seems that young master's troubles are not limited to this. Is there anything else?" Li Yunxin watched him put the shredded meat into his mouth and chewed it carefully. He said, "Something else. Someone forced me to choose a side. It's also annoying, but I can't stay out of it. But the reason is the same as before. If I can get some of my old friends in, maybe I'll feel better. But I don't think you can do anything about it. I don't know whether you're an enemy or a friend, but I think you're a good person. It's fate that we met. I still have something to do. See you later." He stood up and put the branch on the stone slab. He was about to leave. The old man put down the meat in his hand, looked up at him, and said with a smile, "I've received your wine. How can I let you go back empty-handed? Young master, look, where is this?" After saying that, he tapped the ground with the branch in his hand and pointed outside the crevice. Li Yunxin looked outside. Outside the stone crack was the sun and the wild woods. At this time, it still looked like the sun and the wild woods. But it was no longer the same as when he came in. Outside the cave, the banyan trees were lush and green. A corner of the cornice peeked out from the bushes. This was no longer the island he came in from. He was shocked and turned to look at the old man. But the old man didn't look strange. He just slowly tore the meat and occasionally drank a mouthful of wine, just like any other old man who was gluttonous. He smiled kindly at Li Yunxin and waved his hand. "Go, go." Li Yunxin was familiar with the old man's current expression. It was common, but it seemed strange at this time. It was the kind of expression a kind grandfather would have when he blew a candy for a child on the side of the road and watched the child run away happily. He wanted to say something several times, but he stopped himself. But soon he realized a fact. No matter who the other party was, their means were far above his. After escaping danger, he should make a divination for himself. He wanted to see if this was an unlucky year. Why did accidents happen one after another? But now, he smiled and cupped his hands. "Thank you very much." After that, he strode out and went straight into the forest. The old man squinted at him and shook his head. "You're a good boy." Li Yunxin was sure that he was not on the island. After a few steps, he rode on a cloud and rose into the sky. He tried his best to look into the distance, but he realized that this place didn't seem to be the real world. Or rather, it was only a part of the real world. The banyan forest with the temple as the center was real, but there was white fog beyond 100 feet. He was sure that even if he rushed into the fog, he wouldn't be able to get out. So he went straight for a while and landed in the temple. It was a dilapidated temple that seemed to have been located in the wilderness. The 2 pairs of stone lions at the door were covered with moss, and the horizontal board of the main hall was also shaking. The ground was also covered with weeds, and it looked very deserted. But as soon as Li Yunxin entered, the temple immediately became lively. 2 talismans went straight for him, and there were 2 whistling sounds in the air. The broken stone floor in the courtyard trembled slightly, and a golden light rippled like water. He felt the familiar power of a formation. He also heard a high-pitched, bewitching voice. "Aya! Run! Ha! Run!" Li Yunxin took the 2 talismans and pinched them in his palm, turning them into flames and ashes. He took another 2 steps forward, and the 2 flying swords hit his chest, but they didn't even leave a white mark. He took another 4 steps forward, and kicked away a row of stones in the weeds. He shouted, "What are you panicking for? It's me." After he shouted, the courtyard suddenly became quiet. Li Yunxin let out a sigh of relief. "Any casualties?" Sanhua slowly poked her head out of the main hall. She stared at Li Yunxin for a while, and then said doubtfully, "Huh? This is real, huh? Fake? Huh?" Then he saw the door of the main hall was pushed open. Lu Laodao frowned, and his hair was messy. He carefully looked him up and down, and after a while he asked tentatively, "Brother Aksan?" Li Yunxin spread out his hands. "Someone else pretended to be me?" But Lu Laodao didn't say anything, and continued to stare at him. Li Yunxin sighed and said, 800 soldiers ran to the north slope, and the artillery ran to the north side. The soldiers were afraid to touch the artillery, and the artillery was afraid to touch the soldiers. What's your name? My name is Li Yunxin, get it? Lu Laodao probably didn't understand this, and neither did Sanhua Dragon Lady. But Lu Laodao knew that this was indeed Brother Xian. He immediately rushed out of the room, grabbed Li Yunxin's hand, looked him up and down, and said in a hoarse voice, "You scared Laodao to death." Li Yunxin was slightly touched by his attitude, but he didn't relax his vigilance. Things were strange. The Lu Laodao and Sanhua Dragon Lady in this temple knew that he was Li Yunxin, but he had no other way to know that they were the real Lu Gongzan and Sanhua. Because they were people of this era, they couldn't come up with any recognizable tongue twisters or elementary school English texts. Li Yunxin looked into the temple again. Where's Shirkuizi? At this time, Laodao blinked, and his expression became sad. She's hurt. The three of us are the only ones who have walked together. The others. Li Yunxin walked into the main hall of the ruined temple. He saw Shirkuizi lying on her side on the ground, with Lu Laodao's Taoist robe under her body. There were no visible wounds on her body, but her face was pale, and her breath was weak. He bent down to check her breath, and then checked her pulse. Checking the pulse was one of the things that cultivators had to learn. In the early stage of foundation building, they had to understand the meridians and acupoints of the body to have good luck. But he didn't learn it well, so he didn't know what was wrong with Shirkuizi. He heard Lu Laodao talking anxiously behind him. That day, Brother Xian sent her to the abandoned palace and asked the Ghost Emperor to take care of her. He also drew a substitute and put it on Nanshan Hill. I thought I would go get her after this was over. Who knew that something had happened to Brother Xian, and he was nowhere to be found? So I took Jessen to look for the 4 generals outside the city. In the end, I only found her. Sanhua stood at the door and looked at Li Yunxin with blinking eyes. When she saw Lu Laodao looking at her, she said, Oh, I don't know. A group of Taoists came. Oh, that fierce one. Li Yunxin didn't want to listen to her, so he looked at Lu Laodao. Laodao looked at Shirkuizi worriedly and said, Brother Xian sent them out of the city and told them to guide the resentment of the dead souls outside the city of Wei. This was done safely, but we didn't know what the situation was like inside the city, so we waited outside the city. Who knew that a yellow-robed demon would come first, followed by a group of Taoist priests? They wanted to kill the Yin god as soon as they saw it. At this time we couldn't wait, so we ran away. Sanhua and I escaped together, and Jessen, that child, was separated. Later, I thought that the child was still muddle-headed, and maybe she went to the old house of the Qiao family. So I took the risk to go back, but I didn't find her. Then I went to the abandoned palace, but the palace was also surrounded by a group of Taoists. I saw magic and talismans flying all over the sky, and there was a real fight. The people on the streets were running for their lives. I only took a glance, and saw the palace wall collapse. That Ghost Emperor. Alas. Lu Laodao sighed. That Emperor Zhaowu of the Yi dynasty brought her out and handed her to me. But she was surrounded by a group of Taoists. That Ghost Emperor, alas, alas. Laodao sighed 3 times and wiped his eyes. That Ghost Emperor is a ghost, but he's really loyal and courageous. He told I that Shirkuizi was entrusted to him by you, Brother Xian. He, the Emperor of the Yi dynasty, couldn't let you down. He used his supernatural power to send us out of the city and stop those Taoists. I waited outside the city for a while, and saw the city was full of light and gloomy, but after a while, there was no sound. I don't know what happened. Li Yunxin was silent for a while, and sighed with Lu Laodao. Then Laodao said, she was hit by a Taoist spell when she came out of the abandoned palace with Emperor Yi. Alas, Laodao, alas, alas. Li Yunxin thought for a while and stood up. I have demonic power in my body. He frowned and said, I can't just put some spiritual power and true qi into people's bodies to save them. This is a troublesome thing. But what happened just now? Someone pretended to be me? Lu Laodao and Sanhua looked at each other. But there was more than one. When we entered the temple, there was fog around us. We couldn't get out. No matter how far we walked, once we got out of the fog, we would still be in the temple. Then at night, people came one after another. They all said it was you, Brother Xian. But when I asked Lao Dao, I knew it wasn't you. Who else in this world can say the same thing as you, Brother Xian? They pretended to be me. Then they asked you something about me. Li Yunxin looked outside the temple. Did you see an old man? Lu Laodao thought for a while and opened his mouth to speak, but he couldn't hear any sound. Then his figure started to fade. The main hall was also fading. The whole world and the background were fading. Li Yunxin reached out to grab it, but he only had time to stretch his hand into the white fog that had occupied every inch of the surrounding space. But he still grabbed something. The fog suddenly dissipated. He found he was still sitting next to the fire. He was holding his folding fan in his hand. The piece of meat in the old man's hand was almost eaten by him. The empty wine pot was lying on the side. He looked at Li Yunxin with a smile and didn't speak. Li Yunxin took a deep breath. Sir, are you from Daodong? Chapter 211. I'm a person of this world. The old man said with a smile. At the same time, he picked up the piece of meat that Li Yunxin put on the stone slab and handed it to him. It's cold and doesn't taste good. If you haven't eaten this, you really don't know what is the best taste in the world. The meat was indeed cold. A layer of white fat solidified on the surface of the dark brown meat, covering the original burnt smell. Li Yunxin looked at the meat and reached out his hand to take it. After hesitating for a while, he sat by the bonfire and put the meat on the fire. Was what I saw just now an illusion? Some of it was, some of it wasn't. Li Yunxin found that the old man didn't look very old, and his movements weren't that slow. He should be a hale and hearty old man. The old man looked at Li Yunxin. But the information is always correct. The three of them are more than 100 miles away from the city of Wei, in that temple. That woman, she won't die for a while. Li Yunxin thought for a while. So it's true. But the scenes and details I saw were all illusions. You just replayed them for me. The old man smiled. You are a smart young master. But how do you know what they will say and do? The illusion you created is so vivid that I can't find any flaws. I don't know. I don't have any supernatural power to create an illusion. The old man said with a smile. He seemed to like to see Li Yunxin's confused look, which made him happy and interesting, and also a novel experience. There is a good painting on the fan in your hand. You've recorded everything you've seen, and everything you've thought. What you've seen just now is only what's in your mind, not what I've done. When he grabbed at the mist just now, he had grabbed his own folding fan. So you protected the three of them. Li Yunxin looked at him. What do you need me to do? The old man found some dry firewood on the ground and added it to the fire to make it bigger. The flames licked the meat in Li Yunxin's hand, and the fragrance rose again. He pointed at the piece of meat. Eat it first. Li Yunxin didn't say anything. He tore off a piece and put it into his mouth. An excited expression immediately appeared on the old man's face. Oh, you're not afraid of human flesh? Li Yunxin smiled. It doesn't look like it. Since I'm a fiendish demon, I must have done some research on human flesh. But after he said this, his expression froze slightly, because the taste exploded in his mouth. He had not eaten much of the delicacies of this era, but he had eaten a lot in his previous world. In such a highly developed world, he had tried all kinds of ingredients and cooking methods. He had thought that all the delicacies in the world were just so. But who would have thought that the thing in his mouth, such a simple thing that had been roasted over the fire, would actually taste like this? When he spoke, his teeth bit the meat into pieces. The aroma from the muscle fibers burst forth. It was as if every piece of meat was full of fragrance and freshness, and now it finally found a chance to release it to its fullest. Such an aroma filled his mouth in an instant, but he didn't feel tired. After the fragrance, there was a smooth texture and greasy freshness, drilling into every corner of his mouth, lingering on every taste bud. What is this thing? Li Yunxin's eyes widened as he looked at the old man. The old man had already given him too many surprises. Seeing his reaction, the old man just smiled indifferently and said, We are all passers-by. Many things that were not strange in the past, but later on, we know that they are the most precious things in this world. Since you have tasted this delicacy, it means that you are not a boring person. Then this old man has one more thing for you to do. Li Yunxin didn't say anything else. The miraculousness of this old man had exceeded his expectations. The old man continued to say, "This old man still has a month to live, 30 days. You play with me for 30 days. If I enjoy myself to the fullest, I will do one thing for you as a return of your favor. If I don't enjoy myself to the fullest, I won't give you anything." Master Su's body seems to be still strong, Li Yunxin said cautiously. "No matter how I look at it, your lifespan is more than 30 days. Who knows?" The old man stood up. Li Yunxin noticed that the old man seemed to be slightly taller than when he first saw him. He didn't know if it was because he had straightened his back. The old man held a piece of firewood that was still burning from the fire, and asked Li Yunxin, "Do you know what kind of meat you just ate?" Without waiting for him to answer, he threw the firewood in his hand into the dark corner between the rocks. The corner was illuminated. With the help of the firelight, Li Yunxin clearly saw something. At first glance, it looked like a person who had his stomach cut open. White and fat, his stomach was cut open. One of his legs was missing, and the other was half broken. The meat he ate just now should have been cut from that thigh. He was lying flat on a big rock in the corner, one hand hanging loosely down, and his head slightly tilted back. This reminded Li Yunxin of a famous painting from his world, David's Death of Mala. But because of this, he could see his face clearly. It didn't seem to be human. The face had facial features, but like the Dharmakaya of Li Yunxin and Lord Dongting, it retained the outline of a human and some animal features. The facial features on the face were scattered, as if the original face had been inflated from the middle. "Child, you don't eat people," the old man said to him. "But what is a person? Are there internal organs, acupoints, and meridians?" "He also has them. He was originally a servant by my side, and his original body was a big boa in the Lan River." Note: I said he protected me to the shore. Yes, he did protect me to the shore. But like my son and daughter, he didn't have any good intentions. He coveted my things. But I'm just an old man who's about to die. What good things do I have? Alas, in the end he became my food. He is now a Dharmakaya of a demon. If you cut open his body, he's no different from a human. Is he a human? Seeing that Li Yunxin didn't speak, the old man continued. Let's talk about other things, not just the internal organs, but the brain. It's said that humans are the most intelligent of all creatures, and they have wisdom. But did the demon have any intelligence? Eating such a thing that's no different from a human. Is it eating a human, or is it eating wild game? Now think about what you just ate. Do you still think it's delicious? Li Yunxin was silent for a while, and then frowned slightly. I thought you were from Daotong, but later I thought you were from the demon. You saved my people, so Daotong didn't use them to threaten me. So you seem to be on the side of the demon. Now you want me to eat this meat. Eat it, and show me its human body. The purpose is to make me feel uncomfortable. Look at it to break the line in my heart. I can eat this thing that has the same body structure and wisdom as a human. Why can't I eat a human? Alas, but there are some things you don't know. Li Yunxin sighed. I've received higher education, so I know that even if the body structure looks the same, has the same thoughts and wisdom, but the DNA is different. You don't understand this word, but it's natural. But there's another thing. People say that he only looks like a human, but he's a demon. So what if he's really a human? You don't know my past. Or this world, under the control of Daotong and Kenzo, is indeed more stable and happier than the medieval period of a world that might have existed. Daotong and Kenzo played a very positive role. Without their permission, there wouldn't be a large-scale war. And there wouldn't be, alas, in some places, at some times, for a long period of time, it's not rare to use humans as military food, at least in such a cycle of hundreds of years. So I'm very tolerant of cannibalism. Li Yunxin looked at the old man. Whether or not to eat humans is not the essential problem. The essential problem is something else here. He pointed a finger at his head. An unexpected and novel smile appeared on the old man's face again. He laughed loudly. Good, good, good. You're such an interesting young master. This old man wants to make up his mind. Let's go now? This cave is so boring. Without waiting for Li Yunxin's reply, The old man pulled him out of the cave. His hand was pulled, and he wanted to shake it off. But he found it was not the powerful strength of the demon that he imagined, nor was it the tough body of a successful human. It was the hand of an ordinary old man. His palm was slightly rough, but it was definitely not the hand of someone who was used to doing farm work. It was dry but very hot. It seemed to mean that the old man was in a good mood, and his body was also very good. Because of this slight surprise, he let the old man pull him out of the cave into the forest. The old man didn't use any magical power, and walked like an ordinary person. And Li Yunxin was waiting for the old man to cross the water, to see if the old man's habit of casting spells was more like that of a demon or a cultivator. This old man was neither good nor evil, and his words could be interpreted at will. He was really an unpredictable old fox. But when they reached the water, the old man stood still and didn't move. He only looked at Li Yunxin and said, "Take me away." Li Yunxin smiled. "Master Su has magical power. Why do you need me to take you away?" The old man frowned at this time. "Child, when did I ever cast any magical power? Do you think I would lie to you?" Li Yunxin thought carefully. Then he realized that he really didn't. From the moment he saw the old man until now, the old man didn't show any ability that an ordinary old man in his 60s didn't have. He entered the illusion and saw Lu Laodao and Triflower Dragon Lady. But he didn't see how the old man cast spells. Li Yunxin shook his head. "Okay, since Duke Su likes to hide his strength, then I will lend Duke Su a helping hand." Then he waved his sleeve, and a gust of demonic wind swept the old man and himself up into the sky. Although flying was more convenient than when he was in the past, it was not as comfortable as when he was in the past. Flying in the sky, the wind was strong. The speed was also very fast. The strong wind poured into his mouth, making it difficult for him to breathe. The wind blew through his clothes, making him feel cold. Therefore, cultivators could only barely fly when they reached the transcendent state, and only when they reached the true state could they travel the world. Li Yunxin carried the old man up into the sky. He looked forward and deliberately flew very fast. After a quarter of an hour, he didn't see the old man say anything, so he turned his head slightly to look. He was shocked again. The old man's wrinkles were pulled together by the strong wind, and his eyes were closed tightly. His face was green, and his mouth was half open. He looked like a person who was about to die. For a moment, Li Yunxin thought that the old man was deliberately deceiving him. But then he realized that if the old man was really a big shot like he expected, it was understandable that he was deliberately mystifying and pretending to be profound. But it was too undignified for him to act like this. He hurriedly slowed down and carried the old man behind him. He frowned and said, "You really?" The old man finally calmed down and pretended to be angry. "You little kid, why don't you believe me? You go alone." Then he suddenly swung his hand. Normally, an ordinary old man wouldn't be able to shake off Li Yunxin's hand. But seeing that the old man was about to get angry, Li Yunxin was prepared in his heart. Since he was prepared, he naturally planned to hit the enemy away at any time. So he only used a little strength in his hand. The old man suddenly broke free, and with a kick, his whole body fell straight towards the lake. Li Yunxin originally wanted to fish him up, but he saw that the old man's face was still angry, and he was staring at him without a hint of panic. Thus he retracted his stance and just watched. He saw the old man's body fall all the way to the lake. When he was still a few feet away from the water surface, he shouted with a hoarse voice, "Evil creature, come out and welcome me." As soon as his voice fell, the originally calm lake was suddenly stirred up by a foul wind and turbid waves. Then there was a deep roar like that of a cow under the water surface, and a huge shadow appeared. There was another loud noise, and a hornless evil dragon suddenly rushed out of the water, jumped up, and caught the old man on its head. Li Yunxin sucked in a breath of cold air in midair. Of course he recognized this evil dragon. It was the one that bumped into him in the White Forest 7 days ago. At that time, the evil dragon was not afraid of Li Yunxin's chi-kissed dragon son. But now it was like a loyal dog, coming to the old man's call. It was said that animals without intelligence knew the most about dignity and fear. Li Yunxin now looked at the evil dragon's head again. It had a pair of ox ears. But at this moment, the pair of huge ox ears were pressed very low, close to the sides of the head, looking very scary. The old man was caught by the evil dragon, and the old man stretched out his hand to grab the thick hair on his temples. The hair on his temples was as thick as a child's arm. The old man stood in the hair and grabbed it firmly, and then sat cross-legged in the hair. Immediately, he had the momentum of an immortal riding a dragon to the ninth heaven. The dragon could not fly, it could only swim in the water. But at this time, there was an old man on its head, so it did not dare to bury its head in the water. It struggled to raise its head, and slithered on the water surface. When it saw Li Yunxin in midair, it did not dare to show its fierce look, but from time to time, it whimpered. It was as if it was begging him to quickly take the old man to the heavens. Li Yunxin followed the evil dragon, and his eyes were fixed on the old man's figure. Who is this god? At this time, the old man raised his head, and the anger on his face disappeared, replaced by a happy smile. Child, have you ever experienced the feeling of riding a dragon? Chapter 212. The expression on the old man's face was cheerful and open-minded. Even with Li Yunxin's power, he couldn't see any trace of pretense. It was as if an old man casually jumped on the back of a donkey on the side of the road, and then asked him with a smile, "Have you ever tried riding a donkey?" But if he was really an old man with no other thoughts, why would he be standing on the back of the evil dragon? He took a deep breath in the strong wind, slowly lowered his altitude, slowed down his speed, and walked side by side with the old man on the dragon's head. After a moment of silence, he said, "Master Su is really a genius of the present age. I admire you. But, although this evil dragon looks like a dragon, it's not a dragon. If there is a real dragon, it is the only one in the world. Who has ever tried to ride a dragon?" The old man listened to his words and laughed. "Hey, you don't know this, hee. He only said a few words and didn't continue. It was as if he knew a lot of secrets, but at this time, he couldn't tell Li Yunxin in detail." Li Yunxin didn't ask further, and slowly learned how to get along with this old man. He smiled and said, "It's not convenient for Master Su to tell me now, but there will be a time in the future. I was impatient and anxious earlier, so I was rude and offended you. Master Su, please don't blame me." The old man snorted with a smile. "I've already heard of the famous human demon Li Yunxin. You don't need to pretend to be obedient. If you were really obedient, I wouldn't have come to play with you. If you want to apologize, you might as well think of a way to make me happy. If I'm satisfied, I'll promise you one thing when the deadline is up." Previously, this old man always said that he was an ordinary old man, which made Li Yunxin's heart uneasy. But now that he finally said, "I've already heard of the famous human demon Li Yunxin," his heart instantly calmed down. He didn't think that he was famous now. In the world, there weren't many ordinary demons and cultivators who knew him. Just like how he didn't know the name of a random little fish. Logically speaking, there should be many demons living near the Wei River all year round. But he didn't know any of them, because he wasn't interested, and there was no need. But among the others, some great fiendish demons, Taoist orthodoxies and sword sects, he should be quite famous. He was already in the true realm, although there were always some old things with frighteningly high realms. Among the demons and cultivators of the world, they were indeed worthy of the title Great Fiendish Demon. Moreover, there were many mysteries about him that even he himself did not know. For example, the old man beside him probably knew some inside information. Now that the old man had said such words, it meant that he was also one of the small group of existences who stood at the peak of martial power in this world. Li Yunxin felt that at least he knew the details. Narrowing down the scope, he felt more at ease. He just didn't know whether the great name the old man mentioned was a bad name or something else. He hid the surprise on his face and said, "Mr. Su, you let me know the news of my disciples, which was a great kindness to me. Now Dongting is my Taoist field, and I, as the host, naturally can't neglect the guests, let alone make any promises or conditions. I just don't know what kind of interesting thing Mr. Su is talking about." The old man smiled faintly in the wind and pointed forward. You child, do you think this is interesting? Li Yunxin looked forward, following the direction of his finger. However, he didn't see anything interesting. They were deep in the hinterland of Dongting at the moment, surrounded by White Lake water. The inhibition around Dongting Lake was still very far away, and they couldn't even see a shadow at this moment. Therefore, only water, sky, and clouds could be seen. Li Yunxin had been watching it for 6 or 7 days, and he was tired of it. The old man seemed to have guessed what he was thinking and said, Look carefully. Look at the water. The water under us is indigo. Farther away, it becomes emerald green. When the water meets the sky, it is bright white. The white gives birth to clouds. White clouds against the blue sunny sky, such a clean and refreshing scene. Isn't it a wonder? Listen to the wind again. Sometimes high and sometimes low, sometimes far and sometimes near. Cover your ears. As he spoke, he really did cover his ears like a little child. He looked at Li Yunxin happily, and his voice grew louder. The sound of the wind is gone, but you can hear the humming sound. Let go of your hands again, the old man said and opened his arms again. He raised his head as if he was intoxicated. The wind poured into your ears at this moment. Isn't it like the creatures in this world, the sky and the water, talking to you? Li Yunxin blinked, and didn't know what to say to fit the situation. The old man didn't think much of it when he saw how nonchalant he was. He sighed in the wind and said, You are used to these scenes, so you don't know how thrilling it is. If a blind or deaf person suddenly can see and hear, I don't know how excited he would be. The flowers and grasses, the mountains and the rivers around us, which we have grown weary of, are in fact magnificent scenes of unsurpassed beauty. But, he sighed again, I've been blinded by those mundane things. I can't see the real splendor. Li Yunxin's heart skipped a beat. Because of the old man's words and behavior, he also had a slightly inaccurate, but unusually bold guess in his heart. He had actually experienced the feeling the old man was talking about. Moreover, he should have experienced it more deeply and intensely than anyone else in this world. He was born with memories, memories of his previous world, memories of a longer time. He stayed in his previous world for decades, and in this world for more than 10 years. What experience, and personality would prevail? At least for him, it was the past. People in this world couldn't imagine what his previous world was like, but people in his previous world had imagined what this world was like countless times. Just before he died there, some kind of immersive virtual technology had matured, and he had even experienced it several times. A huge amount of experience and knowledge filled his mind. These things could not be replaced or forgotten in a short 10 years of experience in this world. He was born and opened his eyes. For a long time, even a chopstick in his hand was worth a whole day of study. He looked at the handmade marks on the tables and chairs, and the small patterns on the porcelain cups and lanterns. He looked at the riveting process of the wooden houses, and the quality of the window paper. At that time, the whole world was a huge mystery and novelty to him. He experienced it as a tourist and a native, until one day he suddenly realized, oh, this place is real. I probably can't go back. The strong sense of novelty that was about to explode suddenly disappeared, and then he threw himself into those mundane things the old man talked about, magic and longevity. His situation was not exactly the same as the old man's, but some feelings were common. This made him even more curious about the identity of this Mr. Su. Who was he? He listened to the old man while thinking about it. His previous question of what kind of things seemed to open the old man's mouth, and then he couldn't stop. He first asked Li Yunxin to look at the water and clouds, and then asked him to listen to the wind. Then he began to ask him to smell the smell in the wind. The old man claimed that he could smell hundreds of smells in the wind, and he could know what the owner of the smell was doing based on those smells. To prove his point, he also asked Li Yunxin to dive 100 meters deep into the water and catch a fish from a stone cave. Then he used the thick and sharp mane of the evil dragon to cut open its stomach for him to see, to prove that what he said was right. This big fish had just eaten a small fish, and there was a taste of fear in its stomach. Hidden under his old appearance was a heart full of emotion and vitality. He was so sensitive and perceptive that Li Yunxin would have categorized him as a mental patient without any hesitation, if it weren't for the fact that his speech was still orderly and rational. But this old man also reminded him of a Taoist scripture. The virtuous one is like a pure child. Such a journey was not easy for Li Yunxin, but it was not difficult either. He was used to guessing a person's heart through their expression, tone, and words. That was because there was always logic in a person's words. And this logic, if one were to go deeper in Li Yunxin's case, it meant concealment. Because therefore, this kind of thinking pattern seemed simple and direct, but the content of the because had already paved the way for the therefore to lead to the later therefore. People, whether trained or not, all had this innate concealment instinct. Because of this instinct, everything could be traced. What would happen if a person spoke without any rules or rules? What would happen if he spoke according to his heart? Li Yunxin used to think that there were two kinds of people like this. One was a crazy person who had lost his mind, and the other was the first one he had seen. He couldn't find the loopholes in the old man's thinking and logic. In layman's terms, he was so sensitive, and free to express that he was full of loopholes. He didn't know where to start at all. When he first met this old man, he just looked a little weird. But now his true temperament was revealed more and more, and he was gradually becoming a fanatic. Finally, they arrived at Mount June. Compared with the time when Li Yunxin left here 7 days ago, the only change in Mount June was that a wooden pavilion appeared on the beach. It looked nothing like the original wooden pavilion at Sanhiku, but maybe Red Lady just needed memories and artistic conception. Li Yunxin spent a quarter of an hour hesitating on the way, and then he told the old man how to unlock the inhibition of Dongting. The old man smiled faintly and didn't express his opinion. There were no twists and turns in the following things. Li Yunxin came to Ziwei Palace in Mount June once. He went to the front hall and the middle hall. Now he took the old man into Ziwei Palace from the front door and listened to his nagging all the way. Finally, he settled him in a bedroom in the middle hall. At that time, it was already late, and tired birds were returning to their nests. The old man, who was still excited in the daytime, began to yawn. Li Yunxin said a few indifferent words to him, and then he left him in the room. He left and rose high in the sky. Standing in the bright moon, he stared at Ziwei Palace. Nothing happened all night, so he entered his dragon palace to take a rest for a while. He thought that the second day of the old man's arrival in Mount June would be a novel and boring day. He didn't expect that it would be another day that made him feel surprised and suspicious. In the morning, he saw Red Lady drinking alone in the pavilion on the beach with a pot of wine in her hand. There was a lake breeze in the morning, and her figure was quite slender. The wind blew her red clothes against her body, outlining her beautiful curves. Her hair was also messy. Her hair hung loosely down, and half of her face was covered by the wind. Only her delicate red lips and blurred eyes could be seen, which made her look like a mortal. Li Yunxin stood outside the pavilion and quietly watched her leaning against a pillar, with one leg on the railing, drinking like a secular Jianghu person. After a while, she withdrew her gaze from the lake and turned to lean against the pillar to look at Li Yunxin. Her hand loosened, and the empty wine pot fell into the lake. She tilted her head and looked at him for a while with drunken eyes. Then, a lazy smile appeared on her lips. "Why did you bring a person back?" Li Yunxin knew that the person, in Red Lady's words, referred to those ordinary secular people, without any cultivation or mana. He could also hear that she was a little drunk from her words. He came to see her to ask about the prohibition again, but he didn't want to hear her talk about it. So he smiled. "He's not a person, not an ordinary person. He's a dissimulated person." Unexpectedly, Red Lady giggled. She reached out and brushed her hair on her lips. She shook her head slowly. "Dissimulated person? What kind of dissimulated person is he?" When she spoke, she didn't seem to care about the old man. She just said casually, "Isn't he Su Weng from the Su town by the lake? I've seen him many times in the past few years. His ancestors used to be fishing. When his great-ancestor was young, he caught a box of gold and silver jewelry from the lake with a net. That was how he became rich. Then he started a business and bought land. Later, he became rich to his descendants, but he still lived by the lake for generations. He said that Dongting was the place where his family made their fortune. This Su Wang, I watched him grow up. When he was young, he was eccentric. He didn't like to study or do business. He only liked to play around, and almost lost his family business. Fortunately, he had a pair of good children, and took over the family business. Then he gradually recovered. When he was old, his temperament became even more eccentric. I used to be bored by the lake, so I often sneaked to see those interesting people. He was one of the most interesting people by the lake, so I had an impression of him. How could such a person become a dissimulated person in Li Lang's eyes? Li Yunxin listened to her in a daze. After 2 breaths, she blinked her eyes and asked, "Are you serious?" "Of course it's true. When have I ever lied to you?" "But you..." Before the beauty could finish her rebuke, Li Yunxin's figure flashed and disappeared from where she stood. Chapter 213. The weirdness of this thing is beyond his imagination. He thought the old man's words, "his children sank the boat," were a metaphor. It might refer to some of his former subordinates betrayed him, defeated him, and exiled him. But now, from Red Lady's mouth, that matter was actually confirmed. He can no longer calm down, and the curiosity in his heart is very strong. He feels that since he met this old man, his mood has become more and more intense. Now he knows that his curiosity may not be a good thing, and it's not his usual style, but he can't hold back and wants to leave immediately. He rises to the sky by riding the demon wind. His body shakes, and then shows up as a dragon with a length of 300 meters. Then he goes straight to the south bank of Dongting Lake, as fast as lightning. It took him 4 or 5 days to go around Dongting before, but now he has a general destination in his mind, and he is traveling in such a shocking way. His speed is much faster than before. He sets off from Mount June in the early morning. By noon, he has already seen the south bank. Kuan Wuxia, a cultivator in the mysterious state, seals the inhibition of the 1,000-mile Dongting with a thin layer of mist. He doesn't let Li Yunxin see the scene outside Dongting, and only leaves him a blue sky. When he patrolled around Dongting before, he also tried to break the thin mist with the supernatural powers and Taoist spells, but it was in vain. At least in terms of spells, a Taoist in the mysterious state does have an advantage that a true state cultivator can't resist. However, when Li Yunxin is about to approach the south bank and shows up in the sky, he suddenly finds that the thin layer of mist on the south bank is gone. He sees it clearly. There is a small dock far away, but it has been destroyed by the previous huge waves, leaving only a few rotten wooden piles. However, the road leading to the small dock is still intact, and there are people coming and going on the road. This is no longer the territory of the city of Wei, and it is not even the Hezhong state, which belongs to the Wei River. But after all, it is the state capital of the Daqing state, and the customs are similar. Li Yunxin can tell at a glance that this is a funeral. He has seen such a way of doing things outside the city of Wei before. A stage is set up every few miles, and a troupe is invited to perform, regardless of whether people are listening or not. There was a platform on the way to the pier, and there were quite a few people there. For the time being, Li Yunxin didn't think about how the thin mist barrier dissipated. He just hit his figure and flew to within 10 feet of the southern shore. He tried to walk out, but the restriction's gentle yet resolute force pushed him back. Thus, he stood quietly at the end of the road, watching the people in front of the stage. Red Madam said that the old man was indeed Su Wang, who lived in Su Town. And Su Zhen. Li Yunxin knew about it. The city of Wei was the capital of the Hezhong prefecture. The south bank of Dongting Lake was the state of the South River. But the river here was not the Wei River but the South River. The South River was not a branch of the Wei River. Although the river was not as wide as the Wei River, and the amount of water was not as abundant, it was a long river that ran through the east and west of the Daqing state. The mountains along the coast were not as majestic as the Wei River, and the hydrology was not as complicated as the Wei River. However, these just happened to meet the needs of people. In this era, there were no horribly huge ships. The South River with a gentle water flow was enough to meet the trade needs of the Daqing state. Actually, the transportation lifeline of the Daqing state was not the Wei River, but the South River. Li Yunqin had learned about the prefectures along the Dongting Lake, so he knew that the capital of the state of the South River was the Huiqing prefecture. When he met Lu Laodao and the people of the Qiao's escort agency on the road for the first time, they were returning from the city of Huiqing to the city of Wei. In fact, it was much faster to go by water than by land. However, the businessman who asked for the escort probably felt that it was not as safe as walking on the water in the Dongting Lake, so he entrusted the escort to Qiao Duanhong. But it was also because of this that Li Yunqin met them in the city of Wei, and the Qiaos encountered those swordsmen, and the whole family was killed. Later, Li Yunqin was forced to do many things in the city of Wei, and many people died in the city of Wei. Now no matter Daotong, Kenzo demons or Li Yunqin, they all felt that they had their own reasons. But no one asked who the tens of thousands of people who died actually offended and lost their lives for no reason. It was a pity that when the hero drew his sword, the common people suffered for 10 years. But these were just emotions flashing in Li Yunqin's heart. If he were a real teenager or a middle-aged man with a pure heart, he might reflect on these emotions and try to make some changes. However, after all, he was not a real teenager, nor a middle-aged man with a pure heart. In the previous world, he was called sinister and black-bellied. In this world, he was also called a demon. He selectively magnified some of his feelings and suppressed some of his feelings, which was the opposite of Su Wang. Now he stood on the dock and recalled what he knew about the Huiqing prefecture of Hunan province, the Su town under its jurisdiction. The reason why he paid special attention to Su town was that the clan power and scale in this town was terrible. This Su town was the second most prosperous place in the Huiqing prefecture after Huiqing city. Although it was called a town, it was more prosperous than some remote big cities in the prefecture. The population of the town was 60,000, but only a few hundred people did not have the surname Su. The decree of the Huiqing governor was useless in this town. It was said that the head of the Su family in Su town was really useful. He used to think that it was interesting that the head of a big family could compete with the governor of the same place. He also knew that this kind of thing often happened in ancient times. But after all, it was just hearsay. Now, even though it was hearsay, he could see a living example, so he paid more attention to it. Now, if what Red Madam said was right, the head of Su town that he was interested in before was Gong Su, who was terrifyingly clever. In Red Madam's mouth, Gong Su was a dissolute prodigal, a playboy with no ability. In Li Yunqin's eyes, Gong Su was a mysterious man with great magical powers and brilliant Taoist magic. These two impressions could not be reconciled in any case. However, after Li Yunqin stood by the lake and quietly observed and listened for a while, the doubt in his heart did not diminish. Instead, it became stronger. According to the people on the shore, the house of the Su family in Su town collapsed overnight. Gong Su, the head of the family, died, and so did his son and daughter. The cause of death was Gong Su's birthday a few days ago. His son and daughter knew that the old man liked to play most, so they drove the family's gaily painting boat to Dongting to celebrate his birthday. Not only the three of them, but also the heads and stewards of the branches of the Su family were on the gaily painting boat. Almost all the leaders of Su town were on that boat. Then it poured heavily from the sky. The people who talked were not knowledgeable. They only knew the word poured heavily to describe the water column made by Kuan Wuzi. Everyone knew that there was no way the people on the ship would survive. After the people died, they didn't see their bodies, so they should have gone to the lake to salvage them. But now Dongting Lake was also blocked. The gaily painting boat set off from this dock, so they could only worship at this dock. The council members of the Su town all gathered here these days. There were too many things to talk about. It should be known that the Su town was not only a town, it was also a huge economy with industries all over the country. It was no easier to deal with these things when almost all the high-level leaders were dead than to govern a small country. However, people didn't know how to explain the water column that day. They also didn't know how to explain why Dongting, which had been fine for thousands of years, could only be seen but not entered now. After the initial shock and panic, some people found a reason. There were schools of Daotong and Kinzo in Huicheng. Any officer in the city knew to make friends with those Taoists and treat them as distinguished guests. Therefore, some people said that the magistrate of Huicheng hated that the Su family was not under his jurisdiction and coveted the property of the Su family. He persuaded the cultivators in the city with real money to kill the Su family. People didn't know what kind of state could make such a big move, nor did they know the cultivation of the cultivators in the city. However, as long as they knew that those people were immortals, the inference and logic were self-consistent. Red Lady's statement was confirmed. However, she said it casually at that time. In fact, Su Weng was much more important than what she said. But it was understandable. The daughter of the Lord Dongting would not care about the gold, silver, and property of those people. For thousands of years, many ships had sunk in Dongting. Digging it casually would make people as rich as a country. Li Yunxin listened from noon to night. Some people were far away and couldn't hear clearly, but he could recover the words from the words of others. He used 6 hours to go through all the sayings of the people near the pier and memorize them. When he couldn't get any valuable information, he dived into the lake in the afterglow of the setting sun. He tried to go back to the deep water island, where he met Su Weng for the first time, and looked for possible corpses in the water. However, it was not an easy task. A small pond might be stagnant. It was quiet and motionless when there was no wind. However, a big lake like Dongting could almost be regarded as a small ocean. The temperature and density were uneven, so there were many large and small undercurrents under the water. The surface was sparkling, but there might be a whirlpool under the water. The undercurrents at the bottom of the lake crisscrossed. After so many days, the corpses had not been divided and eaten. No one knew where they had gone. Li Yunxin showed his Dharmakaya of God and devil, and stood at the bottom of the lake for a while. He realized that he had to find some helpers to do this. The immortals in people's minds in this world were similar to those in his world. They didn't need to use spells and supernatural powers. One moment, they might end people's life and death, help people change their fate, or move mountains and rivers. The next moment, they might argue with mortals because of a meal. They were just tools for people to express their wishes, and they were symbols of romanticism. However, neither Li Yunxin nor the Lord Dongting could ask Dongting to give him what he wanted just by waving his hand. The Lord Dongting used to have shrimp soldiers and crab generals, so the 9th young master must have a few assistants. However, even if the 9th young master had some assistants, they would probably scatter after his death. In the Dongting of the Lord Dongting, Li Yunxin felt that there must be more than 2 demons, him and Red Lady. In such a large area of water, it was impossible to say that there were no little demons subdued by the Lord Dongting. He didn't pay attention to those demons before, because he didn't know if they were the chess pieces left by the Lord Dongting. Since the Lord Dongting had a way to run out to find the dragon after the inhibition was opened, he might also have a way to control some aquatic demons. He wanted them to get some information from Li Yunxin, but now that he had to use it, he just used it. He was a generous person. He didn't need to pay attention to those who turned around to deliver the message. It was not a big deal anyway. Those who made trouble in front of him, he would just kill them. It was not a big deal either. He suddenly widened his eyes in the water, and countless tiny undercurrents immediately appeared around him. When he was on the land, he could breathe clouds and make wind and rain. In the water, he could also stir undercurrents. This was his new instinct. It was a natural ability of the dragons. Those tiny undercurrents carried his dragon chi and spread in all directions. They told the demons who might be hiding everywhere in the Dongting Lake. A big dragon's monster came to the Dongting and was declaring its existence and territory. At the same time, it issued an order to summon them. From this point of view, it was indeed no different from those beasts who used smell to mark their territory. And this was also one of the reasons why Li Yunxin didn't like to do this before. However, after half an hour, he didn't see any people. Li Yunxin breathed a sigh of relief and realized that something unexpected might happen again. He would not overestimate the loyalty and courage of the demons. The big monsters in the lake might not want to pay attention to him, but the little demons were not so bold. The Lord Dongting was not in the lake. Even if he occupied the nest, he was still a big monster in the real realm. At this moment he could really threaten them. However, even a small fish didn't show up now, but he waited for another hour. The tiny undercurrents went further, and he finally saw the fourth existence with spiritual intelligence in the lake. It was a mermaid. In terms of appearance, he had to say so. This monster had a human body and a fish tail. It seemed that he had just reached the critical moment of transformation. However, he couldn't make further progress because of his lack of personal ability, so he fell into this embarrassing situation. The monster Reiki was very heavy. It was released a few miles away, as if it was afraid that people didn't know it was a monster. Some big monsters would restrain their monster Reiki. Only those with insufficient personal ability would release it. They didn't release it actively. It was the leakage of monster Reiki in Wacken. He looked like a man with a round face and a smiling face. He had fat arms and a belly. However, his lower limbs were slender and crimson. The combination of the two looked really weird. This monster seemed to be shy. He lingered in the undercurrents for a while before hiding behind a big stone full of water grass beside Li Yunxin. He peeped at him secretly. Li Yunxin had sensed him a long time ago, but he was not in the mood to make friends or win him over. He just wanted some information, so he asked without looking back, "Why are you the only one here?" Chapter 214. The red-tailed demon seemed surprised that Li Yunxin had noticed him, but he was not afraid. This was out of Li Yunxin's expectation. The demon in the lake should have heard of the ninth young master's reputation. Now that he had released his dragon chi, he should know that Dragon Sun had arrived. As he asked, the red-tailed demon swayed along the current and came to his side. He circled around him 3 times and looked at him carefully. Then he spoke in human language and clicked his tongue in wonder. "Brother, your attire is really awe-inspiring. But today, the cave master and the demon general have gone to discuss important matters with the 10th young master. Brother, who are you dressing up for?" Li Yunxin listened to the demon's words and was slightly stunned. But after a few thoughts flashed through his mind, he frowned. He immediately used his magical power to disperse the undercurrents that were being sent in all directions. Although he knew nothing about the red-tailed demon's identity, status, or faction, the 10th young master was enough to make him cautious. The 9th young master was called the 9th young master. And now there was a 10th young master. Could this be a coincidence? His expression changed. He planned to get more information from the red-tailed demon. But then, he realized that he seemed to be used to suffering. There was probably no other true state demon in the world who had been wronged like him. He was originally a cultivator of the transcendent state, and his cultivation level was not low. But they were both in the transcendent state. But Ling Kongzi was the center of attention, while he had to hide and pretend to be courteous. Later on, he became a true state demon. He was supposed to be able to go anywhere in the world, but he kept encountering powerful cultivators. After such a torment, no matter what he encountered, his first reaction was actually, "I'll trick him." Li Yunxin sighed and leaned towards the red-tailed fiendish demon. This demon was also a tactful person. He smiled and moved closer, wanting to hear what Li Yunxian had to say. Unexpectedly, he was grabbed by the neck and pulled to Li Yunxin's side. Although he was not good-looking, he had some skills. First, he struggled with all his might. He discovered that his opponent's strength was unimaginably great. He immediately revealed his true form and tried to escape. His true body was a slender little red carp, and he could slip away with a flick of his tail. But how could the dragon's ability to make water be compared to these aquatic creatures? Immediately, he felt the water around him weave into a dense net, trapping him within. The red-tailed demon looked stupid, but at a time like this he had a temper. With a shake of his body, he revealed his half-man, half-fish Dharmakaya and shouted, "Do you know who I am?" His body immediately glowed red, and the upper half of his body inflated like a balloon. A row of fangs appeared on his face, making him look like a ferocious demon. Li Yunxin casually slapped him in the face, and immediately, the newly advanced fiend celestial returned to his original state. All the fangs in his mouth were scattered to God knows where. The demon's ears buzzed from the slap, and his face felt like 2 pieces of hot iron were stuck on it. Not a single part of his body was not loose, and he felt like he would fall apart if he was hit by the water again. He immediately retracted his aura and temper, and begged for mercy. "Spare me, Grandpa, spare me, I was blind." Li Yunxin did not mind, and only asked, "Who is the 10th young master?" The demon's eyes darted around, and just as he was about to make up a lie, he heard Li Yunxin say, "Speak carefully. After listening to what you said, I'll ask someone else. If it matches, then it's fine. If it doesn't, humph. I'm missing a fish tendon rope." This time, he quickly gathered his thoughts, covered his face, and said, "The 10th young master is a powerful demon, the 10th son of the dragon god. But she only lives in Dongting, and never goes out of the lake. No wonder you don't know." Li Yunxin's expression was calm as usual. "Do you know that the dragon god has 9 sons?" The demon answered, I know. Li Yunxin shouted, "Then how dare you lie to me?" The demon panicked, and waved his chubby hands. "Please don't be angry, your majesty, please don't be angry. Although the 10th young master is a dragon's, she is not born of the dragon god. The 10th young master is from Dongting, a giant flood dragon. Do you know about the giant flood dragon? The giant flood dragon is a kind of water monster in this lake. I don't know where it sensed the dragon chi, and it was born from nature. The 10th young master, who had attained the Tao of the great serpent, could be considered to have the bloodline of the divine dragon. However, unlike the other 9 sons, who were born of the divine dragon and other demons, the 10th young master said that he was the true son of the dragon. But he can't stand the cheating of the other 9 sons, so he lives in seclusion in the lake." Speaking of this, his voice gradually faded, because he saw the pair of red antlers on Li Yunxin's dharmakaya. At first he thought it was a disguise, but now, the more he looked at it, the more it looked like the real thing. So that's it. What the red-tailed demon said seemed to be the truth. The truth, he thought. Li Yunxin thought for a while, and felt that it was not impossible that the evil flood dragon in the lake had become a Taoist. But the possibility was not high. Lord Dongting killed the evil flood dragons every year. There should be no fish that escaped the net. But this red-tailed demon knew the word flood dragon, so the 10th young master must know it too. Back then, the Lord Dongting was surprised that he knew the word flood dragon, which meant that this matter should be a secret in Dongting. So whether the 10th young master was an evil flood dragon or not, she was probably not simple. Li Yunxin asked again without batting an eyelid, "What did you mean when you said that I dressed up like this?" The red-tailed demon spoke more carefully. He looked at Li Yunxin nervously and said, This matter is because the 10th young master said that she is the dragon's son. So she likes to call her residence the Dragon Palace. She also likes to call the masters of the 36 caves and the demon generals of the 72 schools as dragons, saying that they are her own dragon son. 36 caves? 72 schools? The demon hurriedly explained, "This cave is not that cave, and this school is not that school. This cave is actually a cave in the lake, a cave occupied by a big demon. It imitates Daotong and Kenzo, and is called a cave. The school is also the undercurrent of the lake. The water is lush, and there are many aquatic creatures, so it is also occupied by demon generals. It is called a school." Li Yunxin sneered, "You're quite ambitious. So you think I am an outsider demon seeking refuge with the 10th young master? But you can't feel the dragon chi?" The red-tailed demon had been nervous for a long time, and now he finally heard this. He trembled even more violently. He stood in the water, bent over, and was about to kneel down like a human. He said repeatedly, "You really are the Grandpa Dragon's son. I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. Grandpa, you must know in this lake. I really didn't know it was the dragon chi. This lake usually." Li Yunxin thought for a while and roughly understood. A part of the divine dragon's soul was sealed in this lake, and every year, 2 or 3 evil flood dragons would cause trouble. Dragon chi could not be found anywhere else, but it was probably not rare in this lake. When the evil flood dragons wreaked havoc, it would spread everywhere. These demons were used to the flood dragon's aura. They couldn't even tell if this aura was the dragon chi. Right? In their eyes, the dragon chi was probably just the smell of the evil flood dragons. Perhaps other demons in the world had the same smell, and it was not surprising. Good. The ignorant are not guilty. Li Yunxin squinted his eyes and thought. He was in the body of a demon, and when he squinted his eyes, his golden eyes turned into slits, looking cruel and dangerous. The red-tailed demon was even more nervous. He wanted to find a way to escape, but there was no way out. Li Yunxin asked again, "Does the Lord Dongting know about this?" The demon answered hurriedly, "A big demon like the Lord Dongting would not have the time to care about us. Besides, Dongting is so vast that it would take more than a month for someone to sail the boat from one end to the other. We don't want to offend the old man's dignity. If we still need to do our best, the old man would not care about us." This was in line with Li Yunxin's deduction. Dongting was so vast, and the Lord Dongting needed some powerful subordinates. But he probably would not delegate his power to the lower levels like human beings. Instead, he would do enfeefment like countless big demons. But it could not be compared with the enfeefment of human beings. At most, it was a loose union. If there was something, they would gather people to do something. If there was nothing, no one was strictly the master of the school. However, this 10th young master seemed to have a plan. She created a nondescript 36 caves and 72 schools under the eyes of the Lord Dongting. No one knew whether the Lord Dongting didn't know or didn't care, or both. So, Li Yunxin asked him, "Why did the cave masters and monster generals in the nearby waters go to the 10th young master's place? Also, why didn't you go? You sound like a big shot." The red-tailed demon showed a bitter face. "Grandpa Dragon's son, you are flattering me. I am just a little demon under the command of the 10th young master. I was sent out to patrol the lake because the monster kings had something to discuss today. Grandpa Dragon's son, look at Dongting. This water area occupies 20 to 30% of Dongting, and it is the territory of the 10th young master. There are still some unruly demons in other parts of the lake that are not under your command. They are not convinced by 10th young master, so I have to keep an eye on them." Even so, the situation in the lake was actually very complicated. Dongting Lake was as wide as the land of a state. With the presence of the Lord Dongting, the cultivators almost didn't make trouble. The Lord Dongting was not a lord with a strong desire for power, so the demons in the lake flourished. Just like the general trend in the world, they all respected the Lord Dongting as the common lord. But in fact, they all had their own territories and small kingdoms. Li Yunxin had been patrolling around the lake, passing through countless demons' territories. In normal times, there may be some bold demons who come to stop him. However, maybe it is because Dongting has just been turned upside down and is completely sealed by a layer of inhibition. Demons don't know what happened, so they don't want to tangle with him. He interrupted the red-tailed demon's complaint. "Tell me the important things. What did they go to discuss?" While listening to the red-tailed demon, he was thinking and analyzing the situation. Therefore, his expression slowly relaxed, and he looked absent-minded. The red-tailed demon observed him and thought he might have a chance to escape. Therefore, he continued to say carefully, "But it was not about anything important. The 10th young master had a friend on the land called Su Zhizhang, who lived in Su Town by the lake. A few days ago, Su Zhizhang and his family came to the lake by boat. The man asked the 10th young master to help him make a storm to get rid of a group of people on his boat. The 10th young master had been friends with him for decades and received many benefits from him. So he agreed. Unexpectedly, the 10th young master made a storm and sank the big boat. When she protected Su Zhizhang's boat to the shore, oh my God! It suddenly rained heavily from the sky. This heavy rain. In the end, the 10th young master failed to protect Su Zhizhang. Haha, the whole family died. After all, we were friends. The 10th young master asked us to find the body of the Su family and bury it next to his dragon palace. We also asked all the monster kings to go and pay their condolences. By the way, we can talk about the sealing of Dongting. It was really a case of wearing out iron shoes and fruitless searching, only to find it by chance. Li Yunxin was happy in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. He pondered for a while and laughed. Oh, speaking of this matter, I happened to run into the corpse of the father of your 10th young master's friend, Su Zhizhang. I just happened to run into it. I came to Dongting to have fun, but I was trapped and couldn't get out. So I wanted to make some friends. Let me ask you, does the old man look like? He described Su Weng's appearance in detail. The red-tailed monster didn't know whether he really knew Su Weng's appearance, or he just wanted to get out of Li Yunxin's hands. He nodded after hearing Li Yunxin's words and showed a happy expression. Yes, yes. My 10th young master said that the most important thing to people is kinship. She said that although they killed each other when they were alive, they probably hoped to be buried in the same place after death. And the meat of the Su family that we found has. He stopped at this point and smiled embarrassedly. Haha, anyway, it's a good thing. My 10th young master will be happy if you really use that old man as a gift. Li Yunxin nodded. What's your name? The red-tailed monster was in a hurry to bring Li Yunxin to his 10th young master. If he brought Li Yunxin there, it would be a negotiation between big demons, and it would be none of his business. He hurriedly said, Your Majesty, my name is Bo Oiba. I am an inspector under the 10th young master. I carry a red coral bone token with me, and I patrol this area. Before he finished his sentence, Li Yunxin had already hit his head with his palm and killed him on the spot. Then, he waved his sleeves and casually stirred his soul into pieces. He found a wooden token with mottled red paint on it. He frowned and clicked his tongue, then put it into his sleeve. With a shake of his body, he transformed into the appearance of the red-tailed demon, Wave Erba, and swaggered towards the south. He said that he couldn't find the demons in the lake because he didn't have any clues. Now Bo Erba talked a lot of things, including the 10th young master's residence, appearance, and the number of demons under her command. Li Yunxin remembered it all. He also knew that the 10th young master was called Dragon Sun, so she must have a way to produce some dragon chi. He searched as he walked. After 2 hours, he knew he was in the right direction. Chapter 215. In ordinary people's impression, the bottom of the lake and the beach are probably covered with sand and beautiful, and lush with all kinds of aquatic plants. But the real situation at the bottom of Dongting Lake is different. Many places are only covered with a thick layer of mud, with a few thin and weak grass sticking out sporadically. There are usually no fish in this kind of place. Even the hunters lurking in the mud are starving. In some places, there are protruding stones like mountains on the land. When the water flows here, it will slow down or cold and warm will collide. Therefore, the bait is rich, and there are more fish. With more fish, there are more fertilizer, and the aquatic plants are lush. This kind of place is like an oasis at the bottom of the lake. With a larger area, more bait, more fish, and lush aquatic plants, people will know that this place must have an owner. Li Yunxin cruises on the uneven bottom of the lake for a long time, and finally finds a place with lush aquatic plants in front of him. But it's not because of the terrain, but because of several ships. He doesn't know whether they are official ships or merchant ships, and he doesn't know when they sank. As far as the eye could see, they were all squeezed together, creating an undulating terrain on the flat ground. At this time, the big ships are all made of wood. The wooden ships sink and the wood rots. There are a lot of salts in the hull, which are loved by small fish and shrimps. It also seemed to have been deliberately cultivated. So when Li Yunxin saw this place, what came into view was actually a forest. He doesn't know what kind of aquatic plants are, but they grow tall and straight in the water, like towering trees. The roots are on the wooden ship, and the white whiskers hang down. Fish and shrimps go in and out of the forest. Outside, there are large areas of aquatic plants and reefs of different colors and shapes. Li Yunxin looks at the reefs, which seem to be transported from Lake Tai by the rich people on the land to make a landscape. But there is no special design here. They are just piled up in 2s and 3s. However, the advantage is that the Lake Tai stones are originally beautiful, so they are not ugly even if they are randomly placed. Secondly, the colors of the aquatic plants in the lake are much richer than those on the land. The two of them complemented each other, creating a different kind of flavor. When Li Yunxin arrives here, he sees the monsters in the lake. Although murky, the red-tailed demon that he had transformed into looked strange and not like a human. It could already be considered as having a Tao. It was rare to see a beast with spiritual intelligence, and even rarer to be able to transform into a human. Otherwise, why would there be fewer great fiendish demons than the high-level cultivators of the Taoist orthodoxies and sword sects, when the number of beasts in the world was more than 10,000 times that of humans? When the storytellers in the marketplace talked about demons and devils, they often said that some demons and devils had hundreds or thousands of demon soldiers under their command, and how awe-inspiring they were. However, these were all nonsense from the secular people who did not know how to cultivate. Dongting King has ruled Dongting for 3,000 years, and the lake is vast. However, how many human-shaped demon soldiers are there under him? When Li Yunxin first met Hong Yang, there were only dozens of people around her, and that was the extravagance of a demon princess's wedding. Therefore, the demons that he saw here were not randomly wandering around and bumping into each other. This demon looks a bit like Murky the red-tailed monster. They are also half human and half fish, but Murky's upper body is fat, and his lower body is slender. This one has a fat lower body and a slender upper body. Seeing Li Yunxin, he is anxious. Why did you come back so late? Our king has been waiting for you for a long time. Our king has something for you to do. Li Yunxin doesn't say anything. He just stares at him coldly for a while, and then says, "Do you remember your name?" The demon is surprised and says, You don't remember me? I am Bo Urban, and you are Murky?" Li Yunxin doesn't change his expression. He walks around him a few times and says, "Tell me, why did our king summon all the monster kings here today? What does our king look like? What kind of behavior does he like? How does he deal with him?" He comes to complain first. That stupid demon Bo Urban is stunned, but after a while, he laughs and points at Li Yunxin and says, Did something happen to you when you were patrolling the lake? Do I look like an imposter to you?" Li Yunxin doesn't joke with him. Frowning, he took out the red coral bone token from his sleeve, which he had found on Bo Urbai's body. He asked Bo Urban to look at it carefully, and then said, "Look carefully, this is the red coral bone token the king gave me. When I went out to patrol the lake, I bumped into a walker with a hairy face and a big mouth. He was holding a stick that could be long or short at will. He said that he was looking for his master. When he saw me, he shouted to kill me. He even transformed into a demon and almost cheated me of my token. Now that all the monster kings are gathering, we can't let anything go wrong. Quickly tell me everything I asked you. I want to see if you are that walker. Then I can report to our king." Hearing him say this, Bo Urban is shocked. He frowns and says, There is a big demon in the lake who can change his appearance? A few days ago, there was someone flying around the lake. Could it be that person?" Li Yunxin didn't answer him, only urging him to hurry up. Seeing his anxious look, Bo Urban felt it was funny, but in the end, he still told him the whole story. After listening to him for a while, Li Yunxin knows why Bo Urban was patrolling the lake, and not Bo Urban. Although Ba Urba was not exceptionally clever and well-behaved, he was able to speak well like a human, and he even had his own thoughts to fuss about. And this Bo Urban was stupid. Previously, when he told Li Yunxin about his king, it was only to prove that he wasn't that hairy thunder god walker. But as he talks, he becomes happy. He talks so happily that he gets carried away, forgetting the time and what he came here for. He not only tells what Li Yunxin asked him, but also tells him what he didn't ask. After talking for half an hour, he pats his head and says, "Oh, I'm so happy. But I'm delaying the king's business." At this time, Li Yunxin has figured out what the 10th young master wants to do. She said she wants to help bury her friends on the land who are in trouble. But it's just an excuse to gather all the monster kings here. What they want is something else. Someone found the demons in the Dongting through some unknown channel. They told them that a big demon in the realm of truth is in the Dongting, and they want them to go there. Demons are willful and unreasonable, but they can't be manipulated at will. The reason why the 10th young master is willing to do this is, it's said that the one who entered the Dongting is Dragon's son. Li Yunxin doesn't know if Daotong is doing this, but just a few days ago, Kun Wuxia declared war to him so seriously and sincerely. Li Yunxin also has a good impression of that Taoist. But this good impression is not because of Stockholm Syndrome, but just because the Taoist he met before is not a gentleman. Although Li Yunxin is not a good person himself, he always feels that Daotong and Kenzo should be the righteous, in the traditional sense. Since it is righteous, it should be righteous. It's full of things that are worse than demons, which is really unpleasant. Kun Wuxia doesn't have a good relationship with him, and he has even become a mortal enemy at this moment. However, after all, he is a bit like an orthodox Xianmen. He can declare war openly, and then persuade him. If he can't persuade him, he won't say much, which is quite like the style of ancient Confucian generals. Therefore, Li Yunxin feels that what is happening in the Dongting at this moment, from the standpoint of Daotong, they do have a reason to do so, but he always feels that there is something evil about it. Li Yunxin is good at this, so he is very sensitive to this smell. It is the smell of a conspiracy. Things may not even be as simple as he thinks now. If he is asked to do this, it may only be a beginning or the first step of a game in a game. However, since he can smell this smell and likes it most, he naturally knows how to solve it. This is the lesson he learned from Yunzi. When he can completely crush the conspiracy with his strength, he should never make trouble for himself because of the mentality of playing and watching. Now he thinks of another organization that has been appearing and disappearing in the past few months. But it seems that it has always been stirring up trouble. That Freemasonry. Their people are a little crazy, cunning and evil, which is in line with Li Yunxin's style. However, Li Yunxin doesn't like him very much, so he has no reason to like them. After figuring this out, he asks the monster Bo-Air to confirm all the details he just said. Then he lets out a long sigh. According to what Bo-Air said, the 10th young master is indeed a big demon. It sounds like she is at the peak of the transcendent realm, and can use thunder and lightning. But the problem is, in the white forest of Lord Dongting, even the weakest evil flood dragon has the strength of the realm of reality. How can he, the 10th young master, who was transformed by the evil flood dragon, fall back to the transcendent realm? Demons don't know these things, but Li Yunxin knows. Besides, the monster kings, who come to the party today, are also in the realm of emptiness and transcendent realm. When he throws the 5 monsters under his seat to Dongting, they may also become monster kings and monster generals. At this time, he once again understands the old saying, only those who have suffered the most hardship can become the best. Before, he always met those old monsters in the realm of reality and the realm of mystery. Those below the transcendent realm are just small fries in his eyes. But now Li Yunxin smiles. As soon as he smiled, a flaw appeared on his face. He turns into the appearance of Bo-Oiba, but it is not a transformation. Demons only have one chance to transform from an animal to a human. What they become is what they look like. Even if there is any change, it is just like what Li Yunxin is doing now. It is a camouflage. However, he was playing with a bunch of soldiers anyway. This camouflage technique was something he could casually make a few hand seals and draw a few lines. It was not a special skill. Therefore, when he smiles happily, his face faintly shows his true appearance. Bo-Erba is stunned at first, and then his eyes widen. He points at Li Yunxin and says, "Ah, you." Li Yunxin doesn't say anything. He kills Bo-Erba with a palm and disperses his soul. He clears his throat again, and runs to the lair of the 10th young master in a panic with the red coral bone token in his hand. He yells, "King! King!" What a disaster! What a disaster! A walker with a hairy face and a mouth is attacking us. The lair of the 10th young master is hidden in the depths of the watergrass forest, but it is not on flat ground, but in a crevice deep in the forest. Li Yunxin holds the token high. The watergrass that has been refined by spiritual power automatically moves to two sides, making way for him. After walking for a while, he realizes that it is really a demon's lair. All kinds of strange heads poke out from the watergrass. They are all demons that have transformed halfway. There are dozens of them. They don't seem to know what Li Yunxin is yelling about. They only know that something bad has happened. They take a few glances, and then shrink their heads back. Li Yunxin walks for a while, and really sees a crevice under a big sunken ship. It is called a crevice, but it is actually a canyon under the water. From here it is dark. No one knows what is hidden under it. At this point, Li Yunxin hesitated for a moment before sighing. He said that he is afraid of water. It is true. But neither Lord Dongting nor anyone else will believe that he is afraid of water. He is not only a big demon, but also the son of a dragon. In their eyes, he is a cruel and sinister person. If he is really afraid of water, wouldn't it be a big joke? He tells the truth, which is rare, but no one believes him. Since no one believes him, he will not use it to make a fuss. Now that he is staring at the canyon, he knows that it is not a good scene. The 10th young master is a demon in the transcendent state, and the demon kings and demon generals around her are all trash. Not to mention the dragon palace. There may not even be a summer palace. The canyon is hidden in the water grass, and the water is not flowing very well. At first glance it is murky and cold. Sand and sand are flying in front of him. There is also a rotten smell in the water. He is not sure if there are corpses piled up in the water. He only paused for a short while. Then, he heard the sound of water flowing and lightning flashing in the canyon. Then, a group of strangely dressed demons surrounded a young man in a white robe and rose to the surface of the water. But looking at this young man, he had a round face and a wide mouth. The corners of his mouth seemed to be naturally pressed down, as if he is always angry. It can be said that he is not angry. He also has a nose. However, his nose was flat and collapsed, as if someone had punched him in the face and pressed his entire nose down. But this nose is not the weirdest part of the face. It is the eyes. Li Yunxin looked for a while before he found his eyes. They are hidden under the eyebrows, 2 dots the size of green beans, and the eyes are only a slit. He looks like a character from the comic books in his world. It is very funny, and this 10th young master's eyesight is not very good. Surrounded by a group of demons, he frowned and looked around, before he finally locked onto Li Yunxin's direction. He shouted, "What happened? Why are you so panicked?" Li Yunxin walked in front of him and said, "Your Majesty, this is bad. There's a handsome, elegant and carefree killer outside. He's already here." The 10th young master frowned and tilted his head. "What killer? Where is he?" Li Yunxin was already in front of the demons. It was only then that he realized that the 10th young master was indeed blind. Tiny electric arcs as thin as strands of hair extended from his body, like tentacles, helping him to detect his surroundings. One of them probed Li Yunxin's body. The 10th young master frowned. "Huh." But he heard Li Yunxin laugh, and his body shook and returned to his original appearance, shouting, "Idiot, your Grandpa Li is here." Note 1. Stockholm Syndrome, Stockholm Effect, also known as Stockholm Syndrome, or Hostage Complex or Hostage Syndrome, refers to a complex in which the victim of a crime has feelings for the perpetrator, and even helps the perpetrator in turn. This emotion causes the victim to have a good impression of the perpetrator, to rely on the perpetrator, and even to help the perpetrator. Chapter 216. Normally, when a normal person saw such a sudden scene, their first thought would be panic. But this group of demons was very different. Seeing Li Yunxin's appearance, they were first stunned. Logically speaking, these demons used to be scale worms, so they could not see any beauty or ugliness in people. But after gaining intelligence and understanding, they had to change according to a person's appearance. Their nature had gradually been erased and changed over decades, centuries, and even millennia. Thus, when these stupid demons saw Li Yunxin, their first thought was, "What a beautiful person! How is that a hairy face and thunder mouth?" It was the great demon, the 10th young master, who could not see, heard Li Yunxin say this and immediately knew something was wrong. Twisting his body, he burrowed behind the demon and said, "Take him down, take him down!" At this time, the demons finally came to their senses. They immediately flashed their weapons and swarmed toward Li Yunxin. The weapons in the hands of the demon kings and demon generals were of different lengths and shapes. There were rusty anchors taken from sunken ships that came crashing down toward Li Yunxin. There was a dung fork made of steel from somewhere that went straight for Li Yunxin's waist. There were even 2 or 3 Qing army standard spears and dagger axes, as well as 2 or 3 sabers and sabers. But they matched the nondescript attire and hideous appearance of the demons. Li Yunxin did not show mercy. With a wave of his hand, a bamboo fan appeared in his hand, and he swept it toward the weapons. He was a great demon of the true realm, and the fan in his hand was where his dragon palace was located. It was also a treasure scroll. How could it be an ordinary item? With this sweep, those weapons were instantly swept into a mess, and they were all broken in a messy manner. The demon felt a huge force coming from his hand, and immediately knew something was wrong. He turned around to escape. But firstly, Li Yunxin hated people who plotted against him behind his back. Secondly, he wanted to take the opportunity to kill people to establish his dominance. Thirdly, he had indeed suppressed his violent nature for many days. His figure flashed and he chased after them, faster than a galloping horse or a shooting star. Using only the tip of his folding fan, he exploded the heads of those demons one by one. This round of killing was so intense that the entire lake had turned into a pool of red soup. On the other hand, the small shrimps and fish in the muddy water were satisfied with the flying brains, minced meat and rotten bones. Li Yunxin casually dealt with these small fries, took a deep breath, and chased after the 10th young master. While he was on the top of the fissure, the water had been muddied by him. At this moment, he no longer cared about the cold and rotten smell of the water in the crevice. Although it was still a blur when he looked down, his good eyes could still see the faint electric sparks that were emitted from the 10th young master's body as she fled. After chasing like this for a quarter of an hour, he realized that the crevice was actually deeper and wider than it looked. The deeper he went, the wider it became. It was a completely different world. He casually killed all the demons under the command of the 10th young master. How could the 10th young master not know? Seeing that she couldn't get rid of the killer behind her even with the terrain advantage, she knew that she was no match for the killer. She was scared and annoyed, so she ran away and said, "I have no enmity with you in the past. Why did you come to my house? I'm not an honest person who can be provoked. I'm a flood dragon in Dongting who has achieved the Tao. If you push me too hard, I will show my real body and fight with you. Both of us will be buried at the bottom of this lake." Her voice came out of the water, but it was different from that on land. It rumbled vaguely, and there were echoes in the gaps between them. But the 10th young master's voice was so loud that Li Yunxin could hear it clearly. He followed her unhurriedly. At the same time, he took out a talisman from his folding fan and lit it up to observe the surroundings. Don't panic," he replied. "I just want to have a calm talk with you to become friends." Why is the 10th young master so panicked? The 10th young master didn't dare to believe his nonsense. His tone was leisurely without any sincerity. "To talk to me calmly." The 10th young master was even more panicked. She knew that her summer palace was deeper, and there was no room for negotiation. So she made up her mind and said, "If you don't leave, I will use the 9th heaven thunder fire." Li Yunxin hurriedly said, "Oh, I heard that the 9th heaven thunder fire is the natural supernatural power of dragons. It specializes in killing in spirits. Do you really think you are a dragon?" Hearing his teasing, the 10th young master gritted her teeth, and her body suddenly tensed up. She tensed up. The tiny electric arcs around her disappeared. They all went back into her body. However, after a breath of time, there was a sudden shout. The earth-shattering electric arcs weaved into a net, connecting the two walls of the deep water canyon, and enveloping Li Yunxin. There were also fish and shrimps in the water. When the fish and shrimps touched the electric net, even fainting would be unnecessary. They directly turned into a puddle of ashes and stirred up the muddy water. When Li Yunxin saw this scene, she was really taken aback. The huge electric net was emitted from the 10th young master's body. She didn't use any Dharma treasure or Dharma spell. When the 10th young master struck out with the lightning, her real body was revealed. With the help of the electric light, Li Yunxin saw her real body. It was indeed the body of a thick dragon snake. A long dorsal fin that almost ran the length of the body flashed in the muddy water with the help of the electric light. It really looked like a dragon's body. At this moment, the electric net had already engulfed them. But Li Yunxin, he didn't dodge or dodge. When he saw the 10th young master's supernatural power, and the appearance of the 10th young master, he had already guessed it. So he laughed and said, "Good, good, good. Grandpa will show you what the real ninth heaven thunder fire is." He didn't dodge or dodge. He just snorted coldly and showed his Dharma body of the god fiend. Then he widened his eyes and shouted, "Thunder, come!" Nothing happened in the water, but in the sky above the water, a huge dark cloud immediately gathered. Once the dark cloud formed, there was a loud crackling sound. A thick bolt of lightning directly blasted into the Dongting. The lightning was so powerful that once it entered the water, the surrounding lake water was evaporated into water vapor. In the blink of an eye, it blasted into the gap where Li Yunxin was. When the 10th young master heard Li Yunxin's shout, he was shocked. Previously, someone told him that there was a big demon of the true state in the lake, and he hoped to get rid of it. When he saw Li Yunxin just now, he suspected that it was the demon of the true state, so he turned around and left. Later, knowing that he couldn't escape, he wanted to use the identity of dragons to scare him away. Unexpectedly, he was really a dragon's. He didn't have time to complain in his heart. He was only thinking about how to resist and beg for mercy. However, how could an ordinary demon bear Li Yunxin's ninth heaven thunderfire? With a loud cracking sound, the smell of burnt meat immediately filled the gap. The 10th young master, who was at the peak of the transcendent state, didn't even have time to groan before his huge body was hit into a hard stick. He fainted straight away. He didn't know how long he fainted. When the 10th young master opened his eyes again, he was no longer in his lair, let alone in the watergrass forest. He was thrown on an island. It was called an island, but it was actually a reef protruding from the lake. The sun was shining high above his head, and he was completely naked. He was so dry that smoke was about to come out. But in fact, he couldn't see anything even when he opened his eyes. He was blind. In the water, he could use the electric sparks all over his body to sense his surroundings. But on land, he really couldn't see anything. Just as he was about to run to the place with water vapor, he heard the voice of the killer. I guessed it. It really was him. The 10th young master had experienced his means, so he didn't dare to speak or move. He just lay on the big rock obediently, hoping that a cloud would come from the sky and cover the sun, so that his body would dry a little slower. Then he heard Li Yunxin say again, "You can discharge electricity. Your real body has such a long fin on its belly. It can be used to scare people. Unfortunately, I've seen it before. Not only have I seen it before, I've even had intimate contact with it." Li Yunxin paused, then laughed mockingly. "So you're actually an electric eel, pretending to be Dragon's son to trick people, right?" The 10th young master's true body was seen through, and he knew that he couldn't escape, so he didn't bother to think anymore. He just said sadly, "What's the name of an electric eel? My real body is a white eel. Today, I've fallen into your hands, and you're a great demon of the true state, a natural-born mythological beast of Dragon's son. Kill me or torture me. Do as you please." White eel. Li Yunxin frowned. But then he said, "Eels, note 1. Well, it looks like you're an invasive species. But I don't care about that. Let me ask you first, what's your name? Let me ask you again. Are the Su family members on land really your friends? The 10th young master originally didn't know why Li Yunxin found her. But sometimes, demons didn't need any reason to fight with each other and fight for territory. Now that she saw that he didn't eat her up, she just thought that he wanted to drag her ashore and torture her. This was also a common method of demons. Similarly, there was no reason, just because I want to. She didn't want Dragon Sun to ask her name first, and then ask about the Su family. The 10th young master felt some hope in her heart. She hurriedly said, Your Majesty, since I'm a demon under Lord Dongting, after I transformed, I took his surname, Li, and my name is Shan. The Su family on land, according to people, can be considered friends. It's just that this lowly one isn't very familiar with them. I just often enjoy some of their offerings. As for the offerings, they aren't anything good. They're all pigs, cows, and sheep. The meat is tight and hot when it enters my mouth. It's really unpleasant. Li Yunxin ignored his long-winded words. He sat on a rock and stared at the naked and comical 10th young master Li Shan, and said, You're a blind person. How did you make friends with the people on land? What do they want you to do when they make friends with you? Li Shan hurriedly said, Your Majesty, please understand, I didn't deliberately make friends with the people on land. My eyes are not bright, and I never like to go ashore. I only like those muddy undercurrents. But one day, a man of the Su family came to Dongting with a boat, left a lot of offerings, and called my name, asking me to come out and meet him. I was going to make some waves to overturn the boat and eat the people and the livestock. But that day was very boring, so I simply went to have a look. As a result, I heard from that man that he was told by Yama in a dream at night, saying that there was a white eel in Dongting who had achieved the Tao and was expected to turn into a dragon. If I can make friends with this eel, I will worship it every year, and in the future, my children will be protected. I also know that this man is talking nonsense, but he said that Yama told me in a dream. If it wasn't for Yama, how could he know that I was here? Thus, I chatted with him skeptically for a while. As a result, that man also knew that there was an evil dragon in Dongting. At that time, I didn't know about it. Hearing this, Li Yunxin frowned and interrupted him. What's the name of the man of the Su family? Su Zhizhang? Or his father? The eel monster Li Shan was stunned for a while before remembering the name of his good friend, Su Zhizhang, who died a few days ago. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, No. It has been many years. It has been more than 200 years. That man was Su Zhizhang's ancestor. He was originally a fisherman. Li Yunxin's eyes lit up. Go on, tell me in detail. If I find out about anything, I'll skin you alive. Li Shan shivered and hurriedly said, Don't worry, my king. I will tell you slowly. After talking to him for a while, I also felt that this little man was interesting. A few years ago, I happened to see a passenger ship passing by. The people on the ship were writing some poems and singing some songs on the deck at night, and some rouge and powder were poured down from the ship. It was very annoying, so I sank it and put it at the bottom of the lake. There were a few boxes of treasures on the ship, but they were of no use to me. After a while, I got familiar with him, so I brought a box of treasures from the bottom of the lake to him. After that, the man became rich. There were more and more children and grandchildren. And then there was Su Zhen. When he said this, Li Yunxin knew that the eel monster was telling the truth. Red Lady told him about Su Weng before. She said that his ancestor fished in Dongting and got a considerable amount of wealth. It was exactly the same as what Li Shan said. Li Shan continued, What do you usually ask me to do? In fact, I didn't do anything. That man told me that there was an evil dragon in Dongting. He also told me that I could claim that the evil dragon was the 10th dragon son in the world. I used this name to gather all the monsters in Dongting and become the monster king of a place. Hey, my real body can use thunder and lightning, and I have a long fin on my belly. If I showed my real body in the muddy water, I really look like dragons, so I did it. I don't mean to blaspheme the dragon god. I usually call myself dragon son in Dongting. How dare I talk nonsense outside Dongting? The ancestor of the Su family was a fisherman, but he knew that there was an evil dragon in this lake. Li Yunqin said slowly. Then, his grandson now asked you to kill his father. Then someone asked you to kill a big demon who entered Dongting. Is this also what the Su family asked you to do? Li Shan could tell that Li Yunqin's tone was not good, so he panicked. He faltered. Yes. Do you know Su Weng? Li Yunqin asked the question he wanted to figure out the most today. The old man that Su Zhizhang asked you to kill. You said that you were friends with Su Zhizhang, so you should know his father. Note 1. Eel. The eel in the eel rice we eat is called white eel in ancient times. The electric eel originated in South America, and its vision deteriorated. It looks similar to eel, but it is very different. It is not even the same class. There was no electric eel in ancient China, so there was no ancient name, so it was named white eel. Chapter 217. 10th Young Master Li Shan is stunned for a while, and then says, That's Su Weng, isn't he dead? Li Yunqin looks at him calmly, not knowing if he can feel his gaze. That old man is not dead. He is in Mount June. Earlier, he hid in an island for a few days, with a demon by his side. He said that the demon is his old servant, and its original body is a big centipede. I've tasted its meat, it's delicious. Li Yunqin walks to Li Shan's side, grabs his arm and lifts him up, hanging him in front of his eyes to look at him carefully. At this time, he is still in the Dharmakaya of gods and demons like a small giant. Li Shan is in a human body, like a child in front of him. Li Yunqin feels a slight itch on his arms and chest. He thinks that Li Shan is trying to find out his situation with electric light. He doesn't stop him. Instead, he hopes that Li Shan can see his eyes now. I believe that old man's words. He doesn't have to lie to me. But now I don't believe you. I'm Qi Wen, the 9th son of the dragon, a great demon in the real realm. Now I'm trapped in Dongting by an inhibition left by a divine dragon, the demon that someone told you to get rid of. Since I can't get out, I have to find some ways to get out. However, before I get out, this Dongting has already been my Taoist field. I don't care how you used to get along with the Lord Dongting. But now that you're here, you little scumbags. Li Yunqin glared at him fiercely and pushed him forward again. You have to tell me everything you know, and worship me, as if I were your ancestor. You have to pray to the celestial being every day and night. You'd better help me find a way to get rid of me, as soon as possible. I've eaten eels, but I haven't eaten eels yet. If you dare to hesitate again, I will make you really a pile of shit in the stomach of the dragon son. After Li Yunqin finished speaking, she threw Li Shan to the ground and shouted, Put on your clothes and tell Grandpa everything. If I'm not satisfied, I'll tear you apart on the spot. By now Li Shan really knew that he had bumped into the main character, and was so flustered that he didn't know what to do. If it was an ordinary battle between demons and monsters, he would probably be more courageous if he was captured, because he knew that demons were cruel by nature. If he begged, it would only make the other party excited and torture him even more. But now she sees a glimmer of hope. Dragon Son seems to really want to ask something important, and wants to take charge of Dongting. Since that was the case, even a fake Dragon Son like him needed a few capable assistants, let alone a Shinryu. He thought about it carefully in his heart, and finally stopped pretending to be a dead fish. Instead, he conjured a white robe and crawled to Li Yunqin's side. Your Majesty, please don't be angry. Your Majesty, please don't be angry. This lowly one does know some things, but I feel that what I said was too outrageous. Outrageous? Yes. It's too inconceivable, so I didn't dare to say it. He really didn't mean to hide it. Since Your Majesty wants to listen, say it. Li Shan shuddered again, and opened his mouth to speak. Your Majesty, you have to know that my eyesight is not good, so I don't often go to the land. Many things are reported by the little monsters under my seat, so I'm not very familiar with them. But I also know that the Daotong and Kenzo in the world are the righteous path of Xianmen cultivators. I also know that Taoists and swordsmen are not friendly to demons. If they encounter those with low cultivation, they will kill them immediately. That lowly one usually makes some waves in Dongting and swallows some people. Hey, it's also for us demons to vent our grievances. Therefore, the Su family found me to be friends with. What's the name of the Su family? Li Yunxin asked. I can't remember it for more than 200 years. Coincidentally, the name of the Su family is easy to remember. His surname is Su and his first name is Three. He is called Su-san. Isn't this an alias? No, it's not, Li Shan hurriedly said. After Su-san died, I continued to contact his descendants. Sometimes when I mentioned his ancestors, they all said that his real name was Su-san. Okay, continue to tell me in detail. Don't make your own decisions. If you think it's useless, you have to tell me. The white eel monster Li Shan continued to speak. Therefore, when the Su family found me to be friends with them, I was not willing. When he said that there was a flood dragon in Dongting, and that I called myself the 10th dragon's son, I became even more suspicious. You must know that even though we fiendish demons are a messy bunch, anyone who is connected to the orthodoxies or sword sects will be shunned at all costs. At that time, I asked Su-san, how can the things you said be known by a fisherman? Are you from Daotong? What are you planning? Su-san said that he did have some supernatural powers. But it wasn't the supernatural powers of Daotong and Kenzo. He was a fisherman, but he seemed to know everything about human cultivators. Back then, I was already quite familiar with him. I told him that you were just making empty promises. Do you know that all the demons and devils in the world hope to obtain the techniques of the orthodoxies and sword sects so that they can take a shortcut to cultivation? Those human cultivators start cultivating when they are children. If they are talented, they can reach the transcendent state in a few decades. If they are ordinary, they can reach the transcendent state, the true state, and the profound state in a few hundred years. Even if the two sages in the world cultivate to such a high level, how long would it take? Only 1,000 years. But we demons transform into humans, and have human acupoints and meridians, but it is much slower. I was a 700-year-old demon, and I only reached the emptiness state at that time. Demons that have transformed into humans for thousands of years are not rare. But how many of them are like the two sages? Therefore, although I don't like Daotong and Kenzo, I can't look down on their divine heart technique. Therefore, I argued with Su-san. This Su-san said some vague things, and I ignored him. Finally, he got angry and said, since you don't believe me, I will teach you the divine heart technique. I will teach you the divine heart technique if you don't believe me. He recited a set of incantations on the spot. When he finished, he told me that to practice this technique, I must first disperse my cultivation, and then go through the tribulations like a human cultivator. At that time, my cultivation was low, and I was born with the ability to control lightning. I didn't have any enemies, so I decided to disperse my cultivation and cultivate again. Do you still remember that technique? Tell me. Li Yunxin let out a breath, feeling that he was about to touch something. His voice became low and calm, and Li Shan noticed the change in his voice. As a result, he was even more careful in his recitation, and told her everything about the incantation he had learned. But when Li Yunxin heard and thought about it, he was slightly disappointed. He didn't know what the incantations of Daotong and Kenzo were, but he had seen the incantations of the painting sect in the translucent jade scroll, and understood a bit from his parents. What Li Shan said was the truth. What he obtained was indeed the divine heart technique. There was nothing strange about it. But this was the strangest part. The Su-san from 200 years ago didn't seem to care much about the techniques of Daotong and Kenzo, and even seemed to look down on them. Moreover, he casually gave Li Shan the divine heart technique that all demons in the world yearned for even in their dreams. This made Li Yunxin think of another person, Qing Liangzhu. That Qing Liangzhu also had a lot of magical abilities, but his words were full of disdain towards Daotong and Kenzo. He said that he was a dual cultivator of both Daotong and Kenzo. There was nothing special about them, and he didn't go through the tribulations. Li Yunxin had fought with him before, and knew that although his words were arrogant, he was speaking the truth. Qing Liangzhu was a member of the Freemasonry. Li Yunqin had felt that the things in Dongting Lake were full of evilness. It was the evilness of the Freemasonry. Then, that Su San was also very likely to be a member of the Freemasonry. This strange organization had appeared and disappeared in the recent situation, like a venomous snake hibernating in the dark. Li Yunqin didn't know what their purpose was, but he had a guess in his mind. Therefore, when he was fighting with Yanzi, he planted a hidden mine. He told the son-in-law of the fourth branch of the Yu family in the city of Wei, the poor Wang Sheng, the method of making gunpowder. Then Wang Sheng was killed. His hidden mine was triggered. But this alone was still not enough to prove the idea in his heart. Now, he even found traces of the Freemasonry by the Dongting Lake. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Then he asked, "So, Su San made a fortune because of the box of treasures you gave him. Then in the past 200 years, he established a big family, and his tentacles extended in all directions. If I'm not wrong, you've done a lot of things for them in the past 200 years. Li Shan was stunned and hurriedly waved his hand. "Ah, I didn't do anything for that person?" The demon instinctively felt that Li Yunqin had some opinions about the Su family, and it didn't seem to be a good one. So he hurriedly distanced himself from them. But Li Yunqin didn't care much about him. Instead, he smiled. Some people want you to do things for them, but you don't even know it yourself. For example, a few days ago, he casually mentioned that the fat of a certain place aroused your interest. Then, a few days later, he told you that a certain boat happened to be carrying people from that place. For example, you did something for him and thought you got benefits. He is a secular person, and he has the heart to run his family business. He promised you great benefits first, and if he only wants a box of treasures in return, he is too narrow-minded. You are a demon, and can be counted as his strong support. You can do a lot of dirty things for him. Think about it. How many people on the continent have you killed in the past 200 years? What kind of people? Did you really want to kill all of them? Li Shan listened to his words, and was stunned for a long time. Then he said, Speaking of which, it's really. Although you are an idiot, you dared to use a demon as a knife, and to deal with you for so long without being noticed. It is indeed a bit like the Freemasonry fishing in troubled waters." Li Yunqin smiled. "That Su San is a powerful person. What happened after that?" "After that he died," Li Shan said carefully. "One year when he went far away, he encountered bandits and was killed. It was said that his corpse was not found. In the next 200 years, the Su family was not that interesting. I practiced the Heaven Heart technique, and my level improved rapidly. I also gathered some demons under my command. It was also thanks to that Su San. Thanks to him." Li Yunqin laughed coldly. Maybe this is the result he wanted to see. Moreover, whether that person is really dead or faking his death, it's hard to say. Continue talking. Li Shan did not dare to refute him, and only dared to listen obediently. After listening, he hurriedly continued. The king asked about that Su Wang, is an anomaly in the Su family. 4 generations, the Su family has been conscientious and diligent, managing their family business. But that Su Wang loves to play, and does not have much contact with me. Logically speaking, this matter of mine is a secret passed down in the Su family. Every generation knows about it, and they will come to make friends. But that Su Wang, I also do not like to pay attention to him. If not for some sacrifices, who would bother to talk to them? Su San's ability and temperament are not something that the rest of the people have learned. Speaking of which, other than playing, that Su Wang does not like women. Originally, this branch of the Su family would end with him, but at that time, there were still some old people in the family who were not dead. Anyway, he adopted a son and a daughter. They were already adults, and there was no kinship between them. With this daughter, he does not care about the family business, and all the important things in the family are taken care of by his children. That son is Su Zhizhang. Although Su Zhizhang is boring, he is very attentive. I think it is reasonable that he wants me to get rid of the old man of the Su family. After all, they are not blood relatives. Li Yunxin listened quietly, and then pondered for a moment. Su Zhizhang told you that a big demon came to Dongting and wanted you to get rid of it? Li Shan hesitated for a while, and then answered yes. He hurriedly added, "It is also God's mercy. That annoying one also drowned, and now he is in my stomach." So, Li Yunxin thought for a while, and then said slowly, "Does it mean 8 days ago, Su Zhizhang told you about this? It was also 8 days ago that Su Wen came to this lake by boat. Now Dongting is blocked, and many people of the Su family are dead. Now, no one from the Su family is contacting you anymore." Li Shan hurriedly clapped his hands. "Your Majesty, you are so smart. That's right, that's right." Li Yunxin knew that he had figured out the context. In his mind, things were roughly like this. Maybe there were many deviations and uncertainties, but the most self-consistent explanation he could infer at present, 200 years ago, a man who belonged to the Freemasonry, named Su San, came to Dongting. He was alone, but he had some intelligence and information. Then, relying on the intelligence and information, he made friends with Li Shan and got his first bucket of gold. Then, with his extraordinary courage and experience, he used Li Shan the demon to clear many obstacles for himself and ran the Su family. Li Yunxin thought that this should be a point of the Freemasonry's layout in the secular world. Taking root in the secular world, they could have a large amount of intelligence and resources. However, Daotong and Kenzo were superior and didn't take this kind of thing very seriously. Their roots and vines were the officials of various countries, and they didn't care much about the power of the people. And the Freemasonry filled this gap. Li Yunxin didn't know how much it filled, but he felt that it was not just in Dongting. It should be noted that a high-level cultivator of Daotong like Yun Zi, who was like an immortal in the eyes of secular people, was tied to the Freemasonry. Then the Su family had been working for the Freemasonry for 200 years, whether they knew it or not. Until Su Wang appeared, Li Yunxin still didn't know how Su Wang had such terrible magical power, and how he went to the Su family and became the patriarch. But it seemed that Su Wang tried to mess up all this. He wanted to destroy the Su family in an unobtrusive way. So he was forced to adopt a son and a daughter. It was said that he was too lazy to manage the family affairs. In fact, he was robbed of his power. But Li Yunxin didn't know how his magical power could be robbed by secular people. After that, it was all based on his own bold conjecture. Su Wang's evil intention was finally exposed, and Su Zhizhang decided to get rid of him. Because of this, he even had a demon by his side to ensure that everything was safe. But Su Wang knew this, so he beat him at his own game, and took all the high-level members of the Su family on board. So today's situation came to this. All the high-level members of the Su family were dead, and Su Wang achieved his goal temporarily in a sense. The key point was that Su Wang knew that there would be a big disaster in Dongting that day. Li Yunxin didn't know how he knew. But in the end, besides these many things, Li Yunxin also realized another thing. Su Wang, who was omnipotent, seemed to come to Dongting to hide from something. If he also knew the existence of the inhibition of Dongting, it meant that in the eyes of such a powerful Su Wang, people outside could not break through the inhibition of Dongting and come in to threaten him. That was to say, it seemed that he really couldn't go out for the time being and couldn't rely on his own ability to break through this inhibition. Chapter 218. But at this time, Li Yunxin doesn't want to leave Dongting anymore. He was just worried about the powerful demons under his command. Now it seems that Su Wang did him a favor. Lu Laodao and Sanhua are safe for the time being. Sure, Queasy is a good person, but it's unrealistic for Li Yunxin to worry about her like how he worries about Lu Laodao. She can only pray for herself. As for the other 4 demons, since Su Wang can't find them, it's hard for him to find them. So he can rest assured. Or is it because even Master Su has to enter the inhibition to hide from something? What is he hiding from? He knows the world outside is not peaceful. People from Daotong came to the city of Wei and decided to wage war against demons. For this reason, they planned to seize the divine dragon's soul in Dongting to weaken Shinryu's power. But the inhibition of Dongting is hard to break, and they don't seem to know the condition of Shinryu's soul. So they must mobilize a large force. But, if this soul, could it be that the true dragon had purposely stayed here, because it had anticipated today's situation? He attracted a large number of cultivators from Daotong and Kinzo here. And then Lord Dongting left in a hurry. Was it because of this? Li Yunxin thinks for a while in silence. Although he knows it's his own wishful thinking, he is getting more and more frightened. Damn it. He can't help cursing. Originally, he stayed in Weishui River because he thought it was a good place to run. But who would have thought that there is still a part of Shinryu's soul hidden in this place? Now he has completely dragged himself into the eye of the storm. Li Shan's heart beats fast when he hears his unkind tone. He is afraid that Dragon Sun will tear him apart when he loses his temper. Li Yunxin is silent for a while, and then says to him, "What is your position among the demons in Dongting Lake?" When Li Shan heard this, he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly got up and answered him properly. "Your Majesty, it's not that I'm boasting. In this Dongting, there were only a few demons in the place of the outer fringe. As for this little one, after cultivating the heavenly will technique, my progress amongst the demons can be said to be at a tremendous pace. Due to the fact that he used to call himself the 10th Dragon Son, he had gathered many demon kings and demon generals. But just now His Majesty," Li Yunxin smiled, "those who can't even take one of my attacks are trash. It's not a pity if he dies." Li Shan lowered his head. He thought to himself, "What realm is this true realm great fiendish demon at? In your eyes, of course they are trash. However, those trash, that were scattered all over the world, could also become demon kings and demon generals, that could gather a region." However, when he thought about how he had indeed taken a blow from Long Sun's 9 Heavens Thunderfire, it could be seen that in Li Yunxin's heart, he was definitely not a piece of trash. He couldn't help but feel slightly proud of himself. He continued, "There are other demons scattered around the lake, and they have gathered some demon generals under their command. Usually, they mind their own business, but they are certainly not in harmony. In the past, when the Lord Dongting issued an edict, they would rush forward. However, if it wasn't for the matter of the Grand Supreme Elder, they would not be convinced in private. Disputes are common, and fights are not rare. Those children who have yet to transform, or are about to transform, are often captured and killed to establish their power. It is indeed difficult, but it is also the norm." When he finished, he thought that Li Yunxin would ask more details. Then he would show off again, so that this Long Sun would know that although he hid in the canyon all day long, he was also aware of what happened in Dongting. However, how could Li Yunxin not know what he was thinking? He immediately said, "Then let's go. You bring me along and sweep through the nests one by one." As soon as he finished, he rolled up Li Shan and entered the water again. Li Shan was dumbfounded. He thought to himself that this dragon was truly savage. Why did he want to sweep over, after only asking these questions? The Lord Dongting is also a big demon, but he usually only subdued people with his power. I don't see him killing people so happily. If he really took Li Yunxin to sweep over nest by nest, the demons in Dongting would not be able to do anything to the Dragon Sun in the real world in the future, but they would hate him to the core. However, he didn't know what Li Yunxin was thinking. When he was trapped in Dongting before, he was only thinking about how to get out of trouble, so that he wouldn't be caught like a turtle in a jar. Therefore, after listening to Hong Yangzi's method, he patrolled around Dongting again, in order to find some ways to relieve the depression in his heart. Unfortunately, he met Su Weng on the isolated island in the lake. Originally, he was bored and wanted to find someone to relieve his boredom. However, he found that Su Weng was not an ordinary secular person, nor was he an ordinary cultivator or demon. Such a strange person appeared in Dongting, where he lived at such a critical moment. Naturally, he was shocked and wanted to find out the details. However, after investigating, he found that the Freemasonry was involved. At this point, he realized that firstly, the inhibition of Dongting could not be broken so easily. Secondly, what happened in the city of Wei and the Weishui River near Dongting. He didn't know which was a coincidence and which was arranged. The whereabouts of the Freemasonry were erratic, and they seemed to have a big plan. They also developed and fostered forces in the secular world, demons and Daotong Kenzo. Now Dongting became the focus of the world. Was it because of the Freemasonry? After all, he was forced to escape from the mountain village, and his parents died suddenly because of Qing Liangzi of the Freemasonry. Let's talk about the soul of Shinryu and Dongting. He first met the ninth young master, and then met the Lord Dongting. Finally, a series of things happened, which made the cultivators of Daotong and Kenzo gather in the city of Wei to get that part of the soul. All these, he didn't know whether it was the plot of the demons or the joint plot of the three parties. Therefore, he realized that the world outside the inhibition of Dongting seemed to be more dangerous than inside Dongting. In the eyes of others, he was a sinister, vicious, paranoid, and arrogant lunatic. But in his heart, he would like to believe that he had fallen into a trap. However, this situation did not belong to a single party. Daotong Kenzo demons and the Freemasonry, they all wanted to do something. However, with him, a ruthless character who liked to turn everything upside down, the trap was out of control. It should not be expected by any party now. Now he was in the relatively safe Dongting Lake. One thing he could do was to clean up the demons in the lake. The Lord Dongting was a powerful monster in the Xian realm, and he had been in Dongting for 3,000 years. He could convince people with his power. But when it came to him, there was only one effective way: kill. If he couldn't get away in a short time, he would turn all the monsters in Dongting into screws. The good days when the Lord Dongting ruled Dongting had passed. And now he wanted to be their ancestor. Chapter 219. Before learning that the lair of the 10th young master Li Shan was destroyed, the Ao king was planning to gather his subordinates to find the flood dragon. However, he doesn't remember the word flood dragon. It is called an evil worm. Not everyone knows that the Lord Dongting left Dongting, but the Ao king is one of the few demons who know the news. This means that he is not a random little bastard. According to his name, he is a monster king. When the Lord Dongting is still here, the evil worm has no chance to cause trouble. Once it appears, it will be killed immediately and will not harm the surrounding water tribes. But now the Lord Dongting is gone, and Li Yunxin is not in a hurry to kill the flood dragon. Therefore, the huge evil flood dragon turns the Dongting upside down today. However, it doesn't dare to go to Mount June. It is scared by Su Wang. The Ao king's real body is a crab. In this Dongting, he has been cultivating for the longest time, except for the Lord Dongting. 1,500 years ago, his spiritual wisdom was awakened. 1,000 years ago, his real body grew to the size of a hill. One day, he saw the Lord Dongting patrolling Dongting with shrimp soldiers and crab generals. An idea came to his mind, and he transformed into a human form. Now that the Lord Dongting is gone, the Ao king hibernates quietly for a few days to observe the situation. Gradually, he finds that no one seems to come out to lead the overall situation. Although Hong Nyangzi is the daughter of the Lord Dongting, all the monsters in the lake know that she is not a decisive evil woman. Instead, she is a person who yearns for love in the world. This kind of person can't take on a big responsibility. The Ao king thinks about it and finally thinks that he is the one who can turn the tide at this moment. Dongting is inexplicably sealed. This is a disaster that has never happened in thousands of years. The monsters and the water tribes in the lake are anxious. If they don't do something now, when will they? What's more, a few days ago, a big demon flew over his territory. It seemed that the demon's realm was quite high. Without the Su family telling him that it is the Wei River Dragon King Li Yunxin, the Ao king is not afraid. He is a big demon at the peak of the transcendent state. Because of his talent, his body is much stronger than ordinary demons. Therefore, he felt that, just like the Lord Dongting 1,000 years ago, It is time for him to patrol the 6 valleys and 13 streams of Dongting with his troops and generals. That's why I'm going to settle the score with that evil bug. That evil bug was really hateful. In the past few days, it had already overturned many cave dwellings and eaten many demons. The Ao king had seen it once from afar, and thought it should be a demon of the true state. Although they were in the true realm, they did not have the intelligence of ordinary demons. They were considered livestock among the demons. Since that was the case, there would always be a way to hurt him if they gathered more people. It didn't matter if they could kill it or not. What was important was that as long as the worm didn't die, other demon kings would die. Either way, it was a good outcome. Then, a demon general rushed into the cave and reported to him that the lair of the 10th young master in the Shipwreck Valley in the west had been destroyed. The Ao king laughed out loud when he heard the news. He then asked the demon general to tell him everything in detail. He and the 10th young master had been enemies for a long time. He was the demon king for 1,000 years, and he had seen the Lord Dongting's heroic patrolling. He had also listened to the Lord Dongting's teachings 3 times before, so he thought that his status would always be higher than the others. But that 10th young master, although he didn't know what her true form was, she called herself Dragon Son. Just this point alone was enough to make him dislike it. Plus, she had hundreds of years of cultivation, and now her level was the same as his. She was also trying to get close to the other demon kings. She seemed to be very restless. When the Ao king thought of these things, he wanted to get rid of her. But he had 1,500 years of life left. He wouldn't recklessly fight with a demon, who was also at the peak of the transcendent state. Thus, when he heard this news now, it was simply like he'd jumped into an icy cold well on a hot summer day, and his heart was carefree to the extreme. He grabbed a piece of sticky meat from a large golden plate beside him, and threw it to the crab monster in front of him. He said, tell me everything." The crab monster hurriedly gobbled it up. Seeing his king laughing, he also became happy. He said, "Hee, my king, I heard that there was a true state demon in this lake. He was 100 feet tall, his eyes were like copper bells, and he spat fire from his mouth. He killed his way to the 10th young master's Shipwreck Valley. He opened his mouth and swallowed all the demon kings and demon generals. He only kept the 10th young master alive and brought her ashore. I think he is going to dry her and eat her." At this point, the crab monster held his belly and laughed. The Ao king was currently in his own palace. It looked like the palace of a human emperor, but his cultivation was not deep. The area was small, about the size of a courtyard, and the surroundings were filled with fog. Therefore, from who knows where, he procured gold cups and lamps, tables and chairs made of cedar wood, blankets soaked with mud, and all sorts of nondescript paintings and calligraphy, and hung them on the walls for decoration. There were a few small demons in the palace. When they heard the crab spirit's words, they saw the Ao king and the demon general laughing, so they laughed as well. But after laughing for a while, the Ao king suddenly stopped. He frowned and thought. After thinking for a while, he suddenly realized something. He grabbed the golden plate beside him and threw it at the crab monster and the demon general's face. He scolded, "You idiot, you think this is a good thing? Who knows if he will come and destroy our immortal's cave after destroying Li Shan's?" The crab monster and the other demons were not as quick-witted as his king. With a smile on his face, he thought for a while. He could not understand what destroying Li Shan's cave and destroying his own cave had to do with destroying his own cave. But when the Ao king is angry, there must be something to be angry about. The Ao king's words must be unfathomable. His joy immediately turned into anger. He gritted his teeth and shouted loudly, saying that he wanted to skin the big demon and pull out the big demon's tendons. The Ao king sighed in exasperation. He stared with his big bulging eyes and thought for a while. Finally, he came up with a wonderful idea. He laughed 3 times and ordered the demon general, "Quickly go and inform the demon kings of the 4 valleys and 13 streams. Tell them that a killer has come and wants to wipe out all of our caves. Tell them to come to the Valley of Storm immediately to discuss the plan and elect me as the Lord of Dongting." Isn't that perfect? The demon general listened to his words and thought for a while. He was thinking about what was so wonderful about this plan. But how could his hard-shelled brain think clearly? She could only remember a few sentences that the Ao King had said. She stood there in a daze for a while. The Ao King was angry again when he saw his stupid look. He kicked him to the ground and rolled a few times. He said, "You idiot, go and come back quickly." The demon general could only shout, "My king is wise. This is a wonderful plan," and ran out of the cave. The crab demon general sent by the Ao King had some innate abilities, so he was able to travel at a very fast speed. It only took him 2 days and 2 nights before he came back. But when the Ao King saw the demon general again, he realized that his 2 thick arms were gone. There was only a bare torso and a head on top of his head. He looked like he was about to cry. The demon general said that he went to Pansien Valley first. But the Snake King listened to him and said that he didn't care about the big demons and whether they were attacking his house or not. The crab monster general had a flash of inspiration. He said that they haven't attacked yet. Once they destroyed Ao King's Valley of Storm, wouldn't they go straight to Pansien Valley? In the end, the Snake King got impatient and said that he was too long-winded and didn't know what to say. He wanted to eat him with wine. The demon general said that he was the messenger of the Ao King. Once he ate him, the Ao King would be furious and would attack his house. When the Snake King heard the demon general's words, she felt that it made sense. But she still said that she was greedy. The demon general had to break one of his claws and let her eat it before he left. After they left, they continued to the next house and arrived at the cauldron-casting valley. The master of this valley was a 1,000-year-old tortoise. He was usually slow and was the enemy of the Snake King of Pansien Valley. When he saw the demon general, he didn't ask about anything else and only asked him where his arm went. The demon general thought that since this tortoise was the enemy of the Snake King, he could ask him to cause some trouble. The crab monster only had this kind of wisdom once every 10 years. He quickly told the tortoise about it, who knew that the tortoise would stare at him and say, "You gave a claw to the Snake King. If I don't eat it when it's my turn, won't I lose face?" So he broke his other claw and ate it. The pitiful demon general dragged his body to the other 2 valleys, but was rejected at the door. The other 2 demon kings only sent people out to say that if they flatten Fongbo Valley, Pansien Valley, and Cauldron Casting Valley, wouldn't they be able to call themselves ancestors? They wouldn't care about your family's matters. He could only go to the last valley, Changsha Valley. The one that occupied Changsha Valley was the 1,000-year-old red flame vermilion toad spirit. It lived at the bottom of the winding Changsha Valley. At this time, the demon general went over and saw the Toad King eating and drinking on the water, using the temperature of the sun and moon to nourish his sea of qi and prolong his life. If the tortoise was said to be slow, then the Toad King was even slower. After meeting the demon general and listening to him talk about many things, he said that the Toad King had seen many storms and was fortunate enough to chat and laugh with the Ao King. Since the Ao King had such a plan, and he was also an old demon that had lived for more than 1,200 years, they would naturally help each other if there was a chance. The demon general's eyes were brimming with tears. He knew that this 1,000-year-old elder had great wisdom. He didn't dare to go to the 13 ravines again. The valley masters of the 4 valleys were demons with extremely high cultivation levels. They had taken human form for a long time, and their temperaments were considered kind. However, he had lost 2 arms after a trip to the friendly great fiendish demons. If he were to head to an uncivilized land like the 13 ravines, he would definitely lose his life. Thus, he hurried back and reported to the Ao King. When the Ao King heard this, he was furious. On the spot, he tore the golden plate in his hand into 2. He said that he would gather his troops and attack Pan-Immortal Valley first, then cast Tripod Valley. Then, he would meet up with the Toad King and destroy the 13 ravines. The 2 of them would then divide the Dongting equally. He also forgot about the matter of dealing with the big demons of the true state. However, before the troops were all gathered, someone came to report that the Snake King was asking for an audience. The Ao King was stunned. He first asked the small demon, who came to report what was going on. The small demon said proudly that the evil bug went to Pan-Immortal Valley. The Snake King fought with the bug for 3 rounds before fleeing and running to the Storm Valley to ask for help. The AO King was immediately overjoyed. He raised the 2 golden melon hammers in his hands and shouted, "Hey, what a good demon girl, refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. I will go and get your left claw back." Chapter 220. The AO King was escorted by a group of demon generals, all the way from the bottom of the dark valley to the bottom of the lake. When he got out of the mountain passes on both sides of the valley, he saw a naked, bright red demon woman swimming anxiously in the water. This demon woman was naked, but there were many steel-like scales on her body. The color of each scale was bright red, and it glowed dimly in the dark bottom of the water. As soon as the AO King saw her, he shouted, "You Red Snake King! You asked my vanguard to report the news, and you ate his pincer. Why did you come to my Storm Valley? Are you here to bully us?" Although the Red Snake King had the body of a human, she was now in the body of a demon, and did not look good. Her face was ferocious and had some bone spurs. The red glow on her body made her look scary and strange. She showed a scary smile and said, "What are you talking about, AO King? Your demon general broke his pincer and was reborn in a few days. It is not a big deal. But my Pansian Valley." She was not afraid that the AO King would hit her with the golden melon hammer. She swam closer with a scary smile. "But something big happened to my Pansian Valley and Cauldron Casting Valley. I don't know how that evil worm swam over, but the big fish ignored it and only ate the small demons. First it destroyed the old bastard's cave, then it came to mine. Now it seems like it is coming to your Storm Valley." I thought about it. What the AO King said makes sense. We should work together to subdue that evil worm. The AO King heard her words and snorted. "If you knew this would happen, why did you do it in the first place?" The Snake King showed a strange smile. "I know you are worried about the water tribe in Dongting, so you want to work together. But the AO King has forgotten one thing. Who is the wife of that old bastard's daughter?" The resourceful AO King listened to her words and was stunned for a while, trying to figure out the deeper meaning in her words. But no matter how he thought about it, he could not figure it out. He restrained his expression and stopped talking. He pretended to understand and said, "Oh, so what?" The Serpent King's eyes widened, and he pretended to be surprised. "AO King, think about it. The 6 demon kings in the valley all know that this evil insect is going to be killed and sent to the Golden-Winged Rock King to eat. Every year, who comes to get the meat of this big worm? It was Bai Yunxin, the adopted daughter of King Rock. Do you still remember? 100 years ago, Bai Yunxin came to the lakeside to run some errands. The old tortoise's daughter happened to be out to play, and was seen by Bai Yunxin. Bai Yunxin said that she thought she was cute, so she pecked her and took her away to be her maid. She really doted on her for the past 100 years. Why didn't I want to get involved in this before?" The snake demon stared at Ao Wang with a pair of bright yellow eyes. She leaned closer and whispered into his ear. "Because even if the 5 of us kill the evil worm with all our might, when Bai Yunxin comes to get the meat, the old bastard's daughter will put in a good word for her, which will be worth 1,000,000 words from us. All the credit will go to her. AO King, think about it, am I right?" Ao Wang finally understood what the Snake King wanted to say, but he still kept a straight face. This, how could I not think of it, The Snake King didn't care about his reaction. She only continued to whisper in his ear. "Previously, I didn't want to work for him for free, but now that the evil worm even destroyed my Pansian Valley, how can I, the Red Snake King, swallow this anger? Coincidentally, the old tortoise has nowhere to go, so he can't swallow this anger. At this time, this matter can be done. If you ask me, we can lead the evil worm to that Li Shan. Didn't they say that he has a big backer and wants to find trouble with us? Let's set up a trap, set up an ambush, and lead the evil worm, Li Shan and his backer, to fight together. It would be best if that person killed the evil Jiao. Let the old tortoise tell his daughter that the person killed the evil Jiao, and the meat of the Jiao was rotten. How could he explain it to his daughter? Then Bai Yunqing would go crazy when she heard this. She is a true state demon. Maybe she can find a way to run into this prohibition spell and teach that person a lesson. What if that person can't kill the evil worm? We can also ask the old tortoise to tell his daughter that that person wants to snatch food from the Peng King's mouth and covet the evil worm's flesh, bones, and fur. If that Bai Yunqing is angry, she must teach that person a lesson. Ao King, do you think this is a good plan? After listening to the Snake King's plan, Ao Wang praised her to the heavens in his heart. However, his expression didn't change, and he only nodded slightly. Well, this needs a long-term plan. Snake King, follow me. The two monster kings talked for a while, and the monster soldiers around Ao Wang were all confused. The monster general who lost his pincers wanted his king to avenge him, but he followed them back to the cave residence in a daze. He didn't know what happened at all, and he just became friends. At this moment, Li Yunqing and Li Shan were also in Dongting, which was hundreds of meters deep. They were listening to a half-human, half-fish monster talking about the 5 Valley Masters' movements. The monster didn't speak very clearly, but Li Yunqing understood everything he wanted to know from a few words. When the monster finished, Li Shan hurriedly smiled and approached him, saying, "You see, I sent spies to the 4 Monster Kings' cave residences. They didn't think of this. In the whole Dongting, the only one who isn't stupid is the Toad King. But the Toad King doesn't like to stir up trouble, so I didn't pay much attention to him." As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. Li Yunqing didn't really care about what he was saying. He was rambling on, trying to claim credit. The monsters in Dongting were so vulnerable, so he didn't need to spend any effort. Today he stopped in the water to listen to their laughable tricks, because of one thing. The little servant girl by Bai Yunqing's side was actually the daughter of the old tortoise in the Cask Cauldron Valley. When he first saw the young maidservant, he felt that she was pretty and had a lively and playful personality. She was a cute little girl when she didn't show her cruel side. He didn't want to know her background here. But he was not curious about the little maid, but about Bai Yunqing. He didn't know how deep the relationship between Bai Yunqing and Dongting was, just like he didn't know that Bai Yunqing was related to the Ghost King in the city of Wei. But these were not what he cared about the most. The reason why he thought about these was that he really wanted to think about things, but he couldn't. For example, what was the situation outside the inhibition of Dongting? Did cultivators really gather in the city of Wei to fight against the demons? What were the demons thinking? Black Bai Yanjun hadn't come to him for a long time. He also felt it was unusual. Since the 5 monster kings in the lake wanted to make trouble, he would let them make trouble first to lure the evil dragon out. He wanted to kill them violently, but now he realized it was better to follow the ideas of those monster kings. He wanted to figure out the situation in Dongting as soon as possible, and then concentrate on thinking about the things outside the lake, his own situation, and Master Su. Let's wait and see. Li Yunqing sighed in the water. At this moment, in the capital of the kingdom of Qing, 2,000 miles away, someone said the same thing. The person who spoke was behind a light yellow gauze curtain, on a gorgeous gilded bed. She waved her hand while talking. Her fingers were white and slender, and each nail was like white jade. The silver-armored warrior standing in front of her tent hurriedly stepped back and lowered his head. He heard the rustling sound of the woman's clothes behind the gauze curtain. She was probably lying down on the ice pillow. The gauze curtain and the big bed under the curtain were not in the room, or even in the pavilion. Instead, they were on a green meadow. The meadow was wide, and there were shadows of woods in the distance. It was as big as a hunting ground. To the east of the woods was Huilong Avenue, a straight road running from north to south of the capital, leading to the Yongding Gate. Behind the Yongding Gate was the Jade Stairs Square. Behind the Jade Stairs Square was the Jinghua Gate. Behind the Jinghua Gate was the residence of the emperor. This meant that the meadow where the woman was behind the gauze curtain was in the downtown of the Kingdom of Qing, the capital of the Kingdom of Qing. It was an honor that the silver-armored warrior could not imagine. Then, the warrior heard the woman behind the gauze curtain say something else. Ask the emperor to come in the afternoon. I have something to ask him. Chapter 221. In the Qing Kingdom, probably only the current Empress Dowager could use such a tone to say such things. However, the silver-armored warrior knew that the Empress Dowager was currently residing within the palace walls, not the woman in front of him. There should be very few people who know of the existence of this woman in front of him. He thought like this, and responded in a low but clear voice. He bowed, then turned around and left. The warrior had walked a dozen or so steps when he heard the jingle of pendants behind the gauze curtain. He knew that the woman in the tent had gotten up. He wanted to turn his head and look at her, but he could not help thinking about her. His Majesty called her the Lady of Qingshui. Bystanders thought that the meadow next to Huilong Avenue was the Son of Heaven's land, and they also thought that the Taoist nun living in this meadow was the Son of Heaven's mistress. But the truth was far from the truth. There were no more than 5 people in the entire kingdom of Qing who knew the inside story, and the silver-armored warrior was one of them. The origin of Taoist priest Qingshui was unknown, and it was also unknown when she had such a relationship with the emperor. After all, the warrior was only 16 years old, and before he could access the secret seemed to have been going on for many years. What he knew now was that this nun seemed to be the true controller of the Qing kingdom. There was a rumor in the world that the world actually belonged to the Zhao family. He believed that the officials of the Zhao clan, led by the heavenly official of the Ministry of Appointments, Zhao Zheng, and the large number of subordinates formed a group of civil officials who divided up the emperor's power and held the real power of the Qing kingdom. This was also what the silver-armored warrior had thought and worried about when he was young. However, after he learned of the secret of this grassland, he realized that he had indeed been overthinking things. The power of the Qing kingdom was not in the hands of the Zhao family or the emperor, and in the hands of Taoist Qingshui. At his age, where he longed to make a name for himself, he naturally had other ideas. For example, he believed that it was a terrible and shameful thing for the monarch's power to be controlled by a woman of unknown origin. So he suggested to the emperor that she be killed and no longer be a puppet. But the emperor's reaction was unexpected. Not only did he refuse to do so, but he also severely reprimanded the warrior, warning him not to have such thoughts again. The warrior once thought that the emperor had something difficult to say and was testing his loyalty. But after several remonstrations, he realized that things were even more unbelievable than he had imagined. That was exactly what the emperor thought. He respected and revered that woman, and was willing to offer his monarchical power. How terrifying. Probably because of this thought, the young warrior finally couldn't help but turn his head slightly after walking a few dozen steps. Quickly glancing behind him, he saw the female Taoist priest Qingshui walk out of the veil. She wasn't wearing a Taoist robe, but a light blue palace dress made of chiffon. Her black hair was loose and unadorned. She was barefoot, and her feet were as smooth and delicate as white jade. She stood on the grass and looked up at the sky for a while, then turned to look at the warrior who had walked away. The silver-armored warrior saw her face, half covered by her black hair, and a pair of eyes that were as bright as the stars in the night sky. He hurriedly withdrew his gaze, not realizing that his heartbeat and footsteps had sped up because of his nervousness. This was the first time he saw the face of the man of Clearwater in 2 years. He could not find any words to describe her beauty. In the wee hours of the morning, the emperor arrived. The emperor was 35 years old this year, and was in the prime of his life. He also looked like an emperor, because of the excellent bloodline of the royal family, and the improvement of this good bloodline from generation to generation. The emperor was handsome, and had a sense of moderation. He had a short beard and came alone. He wore a light yellow robe and a winged crown. She walked across the wide, empty, and deserted lawn, and stopped 10 steps away from Taoist Qingshui. Then he slightly lowered his head and stood in the same place, just like how he stood in front of his father when he was the crown prince many years ago. Or like how his father stood in front of the Taoist priest Qing Shui. The female Taoist priest looked at the sky in a daze. After a while, she saw the emperor from the side. She smiled and waved to him. Come closer. The emperor took 5 steps forward and stopped. There was a drought in G state. I was busy at noon, so I came a little late. Please don't blame me. The female Taoist priest smiled and shook her head. You've been busy recently, but you have to take care of your health. You're thinner than when you came on New Year's Eve. You don't like meat, but you have to eat. Eat meat to have strength. Don't believe in eating light food. Eat all kinds of things. Don't be picky, and your health will not be bad. The emperor nodded. You're right. I'll remember. As for me, the female Taoist priest looked at him seriously. No matter what, you're still the emperor. Yes, I'll remember. The Taoist priest Qing Shui said again. This time it's about the city of Wei. Looking at the current situation of the city of Wei, what do you plan to do? She was indescribably beautiful, but she was slovenly dressed. Now she stood on the grass like a man, barefoot, and with her hands behind her back. She looked even more majestic than the emperor of the Qing kingdom. The emperor stood in front of her like a student answering a teacher's question. He hesitated for a while and said, I heard there were many rumors after the upheaval. For example, they saw the soul of the last emperor of the previous dynasty. The situation in the city of Wei was indeed not stable a few days ago. But now that people from Daotong and Kenzo have arrived, it's not a good idea to keep the city of Wei outside. I plan to use a moderate and peaceful person to go to the city of Wei. Someone who can manage the people's livelihood, and knows how to be patient, and not clash with Daotong and Kenzo. Zhao Jihe will be the first choice. The Taoist priest Qing Shui nodded slightly. Zhao Jihe is indeed a suitable candidate. But I don't want the emperor to care about the city of Wei. The emperor was stunned. Then he said, You must have your reasons for doing this. The world is going to be in chaos. The Taoist priest Qing Shui took 2 steps forward. Her bare feet stepped on the soft grass. Because of her movements, they were exposed under her dress. The emperor quickly glanced at those feet, and then quickly looked away, suppressing his emotions. Because Emperor Li became a ghost emperor, and killed the cultivators of Daotong and Kenzo. This was the start. Then Daotong lost 2 people in the city of Wei. This further fermented. And the background is that the people have been prosperous for thousands of years. The world's population has been increasing. Once there are more people, there will be more demons. So at this time, whether or not Emperor Li is there, whether or not people die in the city of Wei, there will be a war. This war will affect the entire world. No country will be able to escape. The Taoist priest Qing Shui turned to face the emperor. Emperor, you have often lamented to me that the world is not fair. Daotong and Kenzo are the barriers of the world. Now you should know that this war is a good time to break this barrier. After saying this, the Taoist priest Qing Shui was silent for a moment. Then, a smile appeared on her face. Just like if you don't leave me, you can't be a true emperor. If the world doesn't leave Daotong and Kenzo, it can't be a true world. They make the world peaceful and stable, but they also make the world lose its vitality. No one likes to be kept in captivity, right? The emperor was slightly startled and blinked. He didn't know if he should say yes. He wasn't sure if Taoist Qing Shui was asking if he didn't like that he couldn't leave her, or if it was the latter part. But soon his confusion was answered. You are a good emperor. You should be a true emperor. The Taoist priest Qing Shui lowered her eyes and sighed. I should go. Leave me and you can be a true emperor. And I am going to do what I have been waiting for. I will make the world a world of the people, not a world of Daotong and Kenzo. The emperor was stunned. After a moment, he lost his composure and took a step forward. You are leaving. You have to grow up. The Taoist priest Qing Shui looked at him. You should know that there is a man named Li Yunxin in the city of Wei. I want to see how far he can go. Li Yunxin. I know him. But the emperor didn't care about this name. He asked eagerly, when will you come back? This time, the Taoist priest Qing Shui was silent for a long time. Then she said, You should hope that you will never see me again. If you see me again, it means that I have failed. How to do things, someone will tell you again. Emperor. The emperor took another step forward, and even wanted to reach out to hold her. But he only caught a little light. The moment he took a step forward, the figure of Taoist Qing Shui gradually faded. The emperor heard the last words she left behind. Don't be afraid. Chapter 222. Don't be afraid. In the dim light, the Taoist priest said to a black cat under the table, Daotong wants to get rid of big demons. They won't care about little things like you. The Taoist priest looked like he was in his 30s and had an ordinary face. He wore a Taoist robe that flowed like water and shone brightly. His voice was accompanied by the sound of the wind. However, the sound of the wind didn't come from his throat. It came from outside the window. The room wasn't big and had simple furnishings. There was a bed, a table, and a stool. The walls were made of a single piece of rock, and so were the doors and windows. However, there was no paper on the door or the window. The strong wind whistled in and passed through every crevice in the room, trying to move everything. However, the bed, table, and stool were also made of rock. The strong wind couldn't do anything, so it had to rush out again. The Taoist priest seemed to be used to this environment. He took 2 steps in the strong wind and said, It's not like Daotong didn't take in demons as divine beasts. You have cultivated the heaven's will and reached the emptiness realm after a few months. You are very talented. You can tell me everything that Li Yunxin does and all the details. Then you will make a great contribution to Daotong. At that time, the black cat under the table suddenly spoke softly. Stupid Taoist priest. Let me go down the mountain first, and I will tell you everything, okay? The Taoist priest didn't answer. Instead, he twirled his whiskers and said, That chicken spirit is in another quiet room. He has said everything that needs to be said. Although his brain is small and his realm is low, he is more reasonable than you. However, his appearance is not good, and he doesn't look dignified. You call yourself the chief police fairy. Although it's nonsense, you are beautiful and more like a cultivator than that chicken spirit. Today, I came to ask you again. I want you to say it one more time to verify it, and to see your sincerity. Whether you say it or not, we already know the general situation. This is your last chance. If you continue to be so stubborn, you will have to give this chance to the demon next door. As the Taoist spoke, the black cat lay on the ground with its 2 front paws tucked into its chest, and narrowed its golden eyes at him. When he finished, the black cat yawned loudly, its whiskers trembling slightly, and it said, The great king used to tell us that this is called the prisoner's dilemma when he talks to us about the mind. The 2 bad guys were locked up. If neither of them confessed, they might be able to escape punishment. If they told the truth, they might be severely punished. If one person tells and the other doesn't, the one who tells will be exonerated, and the one who doesn't will be heavily punished. Foolish Taoist priest. The way you used it, the great king is much more brilliant than you. Save it. The black cat closed its eyes again and rested its head on its front paws. After a while he couldn't help but say, He's so stupid. The Taoist priest stopped talking. Staring at her coldly for a moment, he pushed the door open and walked out. There was no sound when the stone door moved, but the sound of the wind outside the door grew louder in an instant. The door was closed, and the sound of the wind died down. The black cat was still quietly lying under the table, and had no intention of jumping out of the window or the door. In fact, the door and the window were not papered or locked. Even an adult could easily crawl out of it. The Taoist priest stepped out of the door and stepped into the void. The sea of clouds surged beneath his feet, and the bright moon hung high above his head. Because there was no flat ground outside the room, but it was suspended in the air. A few hundred meters below the Taoist priest was a sea of clouds. It was a sea of clouds formed by condensation of water vapor, due to the extreme height and coldness. On some nights, the sea of clouds would disperse, and the view below could be seen. The horizon would show an obvious arc, and everything would look so small. There were only faint spots of light on the dark land, and the light could only shine for a short while in the darkness. When the night deepened, the whole world would be plunged into complete darkness. The The Taoist priest knew that those small spots of light were the largest and most prosperous human cities in the known world. However, compared to the vast land and the deep darkness, the power and existence of the mortals seemed so insignificant. The Taoist priest had never left the mountain, so he couldn't imagine how sad a life was, and how sad a group of people were. From his birth until now, for a total of 46 years, he had always lived on the Cloud Mountain. There were many cultivators like him, born in the Cloud Mountain, cultivated in the Cloud Mountain, and ascended to heaven in the Cloud Mountain. They were interested in the sea of clouds, the sun, and the moon, but they were not interested in anything under the sea of clouds. Only the most ambitious and the least ambitious would leave the mountain and go to the mortal world, either to experience the tribulation or to enjoy the glory and splendor. However, in the Taoist priest's eyes, the splendor of the mortal world could not compare to a pot of moonlight on the Cloud Mountain. The Cloud Mountain was right behind him. However, he couldn't see the entire Cloud Mountain right now, because the Cloud Mountain was so huge. It was said that it was transformed from a huge fish called Kuan a long time ago. That huge fish used the great void as an ocean and swam around. Later, it got tired and stopped above the sea of clouds in the heavenly sphere and fell into a deep sleep. The celestials then cast spells on it, turning it into the Cloud Mountain for the cultivators to live in. It was also said that this Kuan might wake up one day, maybe after billions of years, or maybe tomorrow. The Taoist priests liked this saying. This made cultivators like them feel like a sharp sword was hanging in their hearts, and they couldn't slack off. The room that the black cat was in was on the stone wall of the Cloud Mountain, located at the lowest level. The room to the Cloud Mountain was like a grain of sand to a huge whale. The shape of the Cloud Mountain was indeed like a fish. The Taoist priest hadn't seen its entire appearance, but he had read the ancient records. His current position was probably at the tail of the fish, which was where the 36 paradises imprisoned the evildoers. He stood in the void for a while, and then he flew diagonally upwards in the strong wind. Soon, another person flew over from the other side, and the two of them met in the moonlight. The newcomer was a Taoist priest dressed in the same way, and he was about the same age. The Taoist priest who interrogated the black cat walked side by side with him. After a moment of silence, he said, "Stubborn. In my opinion, it's best to kill it." The newcomer shook his head, and his voice was intermittent in the wind, but it was very clear. Sect Master Kuan Wuxia said that we can't kill it, and we can't punish it. They might have other uses. One is a demon in the emptiness realm, and the other is a demon in the intent realm. If it's the cultivators on the Cloud Mountain, they are not allowed to leave the paradises. The Taoist priest said disdainfully, "What use can they have? Could it be that they can be used in the future?" "It's exactly what you think." The newcomer nodded. Sect Master said that we should keep these two demons alive. In case that Li Yunxing can't be controlled in the lower realm, these two demons can be used to hold him hostage. When the Taoist priest heard this, his eyes widened in disbelief. Can't be controlled. A demon transformed from a Taoist priest who has just reached the true realm. How can it be can't be controlled? Sect Master always has his reasons. Let's do as he says. The newcomer's tone was also somewhat helpless. The two of them went straight up in the moonlight. Compared to the entire Cloud Mountain, they were like 2 grains of dust next to a huge whale. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.